Hey again. Yeah, I don't know. I I don't remember what I did the other day to make it happen again. But I don't know what I did the other day to fix it freezing up on people, but I just so I decided to close and reopen it. So doo, doo, doo. Hello again. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said to I don't know if this is going to be correct in how many people are on here, but Cherry Bomb 48, I believe, said um uh, possibly I was, yeah, like sometimes I don't know. It doesn't even have to be especially windy sometimes, but sometimes if it's colder than Comcast likes it to be, I have issues with my connection just, watching stuff on the Roku thing at home. It happens with just about everything. And what was I doing? I was looking for a thing. Oh, that's right. For some reason, the weather app on this doesn't work because I don't know. So I was here's a thing. Why are you giving me alerts and then not giving them to me? Uh, Somebody has something to say to me. Ah, but yeah. So yeah, there were some folks in the in the original attempt at streaming, weren't there? I don't know. I'm at this point in my life where if somebody has a clear problem with whatever I'm doing, but they're not even sure what their problem is because it's clearly not based on anything I actually said, then it's more their problem than mine. Yeah, my friend Mark said, um, ages and ages ago. I forget if it was directly to me or if it was just in an old deathrock.com message board discussion he and I were having that uh if people are pissed at you for no reason you can figure out, then you're probably doing something right. And I'm my father said some variation of that a few times, like, you know, um uh people only get angry when you make them think. Or was it people only get angry when you make them think about what they're doing? It was something like that, and I've probably mangled it, but he's no longer alive to, tell me the correct way to say that. Oh, God. My dad was a weird man, full of all sorts of little conspiracy theories and stuff about. I don't remember the details he'd made up in his own head, but he had he had somehow convinced himself that HIV was created by the French to get back at Reagan for the Middle East conflict, and which caused global warming. So my dad believed in global warming, like, and climate change and all that long before, all of the stuff that people are talking about now, like back when people were still saying, oh, this is just scare tactics. And oh yeah. Uh so yeah, like like when people were like, thinking that, like, legit, like most people, like not just like, the irrational, people now. Yeah, he's always believed in climate change, but he thinks it's a result of chemical warfare. And what I did when he would say that was I just smile and nod because, like, while I certainly, was well read enough, even as young as 12, 13, to know that, yeah, climate change is a thing, but it certainly is not directly caused by chemical warfare in the Middle East, which is what my dad believed. And I'm just like, okay, Dad, you keep doing that. Oh God, I've got this idea in my head of making a shit my dad used to say video, but I don't know if I'd be able to do his craziness justice, for a lot of it, because it's stuff like that, like where you just have to like sit there, like you really have to would have had to experience him to really get the full brunt of my father's weirdness. I don't know why he specifically picked on France about, and why he was convinced that they had created HIV and AIDS. One of my old therapists, I was telling her about that, and she says that a lot of the earliest writing about HIV was coming out of France. So I guess maybe he knew that and put that together. So I don't know. All I know is that for being raised by crazy people, I'm not doing so bad. So you're saying you were going to get on with a tattoo video. I don't know. I don't really have a great schedule for other than, a scheduled live stream for Wednesdays where I'm just like, sometimes sewing, sometimes doing a jigsaw puzzle and just hanging out, except for the final Wednesdays of the month where I do a reading. I don't really have much in the way of a schedule. About approximately every 6 days, I fill my pill pods and ramble on at the camera for about, 20 to 40 minutes, sometimes longer. So yeah, I don't know. Like I could I could try and make some time, maybe tomorrow or Monday to do a tattoo, tour video. I've got a lot. I've been tattooed 18 times, but 2 are cover-ups, and that would be this one is covered up what I did myself. The old stick and poke with a quill pen, and this here is covering up something else, but it's the David Bowie Black Star. So, like if you're going to get a cover up with something, you might as well cover up with David Bowie. And let's see, could I stand to do any more socks or what? I don't know. Excuse me. Oh yeah. Oh, I love my Bowie on there. And Prince. I don't know. It's going to be upside down, but I've definitely got my Prince tattoo. Oh, God. I had been a fan of Prince since I was 10 years old, and the man's music career is just so eclectic and broad, and there's so much of his stuff from the 80s where I can clearly hear influences coming from the British underground and what is often like tangentially called post-punk or light gothic, like Gene Loves Jezebel and Echo and the Bunnymen and all of that. I can hear the influences of that in a lot of his music from the 80s, especially. He's just he was just and so talented and so knowledged, and the man like barely had any formal training in music, and even then it was piano, drums, I think guitar, because his father was a jazz musician, and who considered himself king of the Minneapolis jazz scene, so he legit named his son Prince. And his mother was a jazz and blues singer, so he learned vocal technique from her, either just from watching or because she was teaching him how to do it right. And oh yeah, I by the time Prince had died, I was still so numb from David Bowie that I just kind of shut off for a few days, and like I had no more tears to cry really, but I just kind of just shut myself off for a few days. And yeah, David Bowie, I don't know, I was just so messed up, like emotionally. I had 3 friends getting me on Messenger and leaving Facebook posts on my profile asking if I was okay, like after the news broke that David Bowie had died, and I knew that before any of them did because of because of news alerts. But still, it's like I had like at least three friends asking me if I was going to be okay and if I needed to talk to anybody and all of that. And it was just, yeah, that was like 2016 was a really bad year. And I'm not saying that David Bowie held the fabric of the universe together, but look around us. Look at what has happened since. You know, and plus, like Peter Burns, the same year, the like three guys who very existence was just enough to validate anybody who was at least, any guy who was at least kind of effeminate. Like these men, their existence validated that not only, are you valid and good, you can be smoking hot and, popular with the men and the ladies, and that is good and fair, and just be who you are and do what you do, and they held that up, and whether they necessarily intended to or not. And so that year kind of broke me, and Leonard Cohen too. And I was talking about Leonard Cohen earlier this evening. Oh yeah, that's and I was actually like into David Bowie or into Prince long before I was into David Bowie, and I don't know if I credit that to I don't know, he had a really he had just like had the bat dance and all of that, and I don't know if it was that with the Batman or, and see, that's, like I said in Thursday night's live stream, Prince did the soundtrack for a Tim Burton movie. Like that alone is worth golf points. Oh, I didn't list my favorite films. That's what I was gonna do. I thought I was done. So yeah, like favorite directors. Number one would be Derek Jarman, and I just cannot pick a favorite film by him. And I mean, if I were to just pull one out, like I've watched, I don't even know if I've watched Sebastiane or Jubilee more, but hello, Reverend Seymour something. I don't know. I can barely read even from this distance. So yeah, if I were to pick a favorite Derek Jarman film, it's very difficult for me just because there's so much to love. I don't even know which one I've watched more, Sebastiane or Jubilee. I know I've seen both of them a lot, but which one have I seen the most? I don't know. That's the thing about DVDs is like you can't pop it in and see where the or like open up the end of it and see how worn down the magnetic tape is like you can with a VHS or a beta. That's the downside to DVDs. It's like I can't look for damage to see if this one's been scraped across the playheads more, or if it's the other one. Next in line for my favorite directors would be F.W. Murnau. Yes, I named one of my cats after Friedrich Wilhelm Murnau. He's best known for the writer and director of Nosferatu. But I would have to say that my favorite Murnau film is Faust. I also did a video for 2018's National Coming Out Day about the death of F.W. Murnau, and if you want to watch that, it's a shorter one for me, so I'm not going on about, for 20 minutes about, this, that, and the other thing. I'm only going on for about 10 minutes, so maybe closer to 15, but so yeah, I would have to say Murnau's Faust is probably my favorite one of his. And oddly, it's the one that I don't own because the edition of it that I really want is more expensive than my fancy 2-disc edition of Nosferatu. So it's like, it's expensive. And I'm like, so I check it out from the library every chance I get, but um uh every chance I want to. So in but so I've just been putting off getting it just because it costs so much. uh I would also say another favorite director is Fritz Lang, and I know this is cliche for a favorite Fritz Lang, but I would have to say Metropolis. That is just such, like, it's like, I don't know, it's got this diet socialist message, which, of course I appreciate, and but it is just such a stunning film as far as set design and cinematography goes. He just he clearly had a vision for Metropolis, and it is wonderful. Like, this vision for Metropolis has been memed so many times. Like, Tim Burton ripped off Metropolis so many times with his own set design. He's also ripped off of Robert Vine so many times for set design. If we're talking German expressionists, since I've already listed Murnau and Fritz Lang, who was often associated with the German expressionists. I've only seen two Robert Vine films. That would be Cabin of Dr. Caligari and Genuine Tale of a Vampire. I don't know. I don't know if I'd call each of them my favorite films. I don't know if I'd call either of them a favorite film of mine. At least not from a favorite director. I would probably say Cabin of Dr. Caligari was my first favorite silent film. But I don't know. Like, it's another very beautiful, stunning film. But would I put it on the same level as Metropolis? I'd say probably not, but it is definitely one of my favorite silents. But I was limiting myself to favorite directors. Just to get him out of the way, I will say my favorite Tim Burton film. I would consider him one of my favorite directors, even though in the last 10 years, he has produced a lot more misses that I really want to enjoy, but I can't really bring myself to enjoy his Alice movies. There's this very fan fiction kind of feeling about it. It feels very rushed in some ways, like, either he or Johnny Depp is holding up this contractual obligation to Disney that, so they're just like, pushing through these, Alice films that feel very fan fiction just to get them done and hold up to some promise or something. But my favorite Tim Burton is probably going to surprise some people, but it is Pee-wee's Big Adventure. That is my favorite Tim Burton film because it was my first favorite Tim Burton film. It was my first Tim Burton film. And there's always going to be that soft spot for it that, like, even though I would say Beetlejuice and Edward Scissorhands are two of those movies that I would say are just absolutely perfect. There's nothing about them to change in any way. I could sort of kind of maybe see a few parts about Pee-wee's Big Adventure that I could tweak if I were to really analyze it, which I'm not going to do right now. But yeah, I would still say that Pee-wee's Big Adventure is my favorite Tim Burton. Just because, you grow up parked in front of Paul Rubens every Saturday morning. Like, that was my favorite movie when I was 5 years old. 5, 6 years old, my favorite movie was Pee-wee's Big Adventure. And yet my parents had the nerve to be surprised when I turned out weird. Especially my dad, who had custody after the divorce. And that is another story for another time. One of my other favorite directors, I would say, is Todd Browning. In which case, like, while he is probably best known for Bela Lugosi's Dracula, I would say Freaks beats out Dracula for my favorite Todd Browning film. And that is just one of those, it's gotten some flack. It's gotten a lot of flack from people over the decades, like off and on, like literally since it first came out in 1930. People saying that, oh, this is exploitative. This, makes people with these various handicaps, look bad and sinister and villainous. But then again, you see other people who have these same handicaps who will go and say, no, it shows that we stick together and, we, don't, take, we don't take people, betraying us and being cruel and exploitative of us. And, I'm a bit more on that side, that it's it's kind of empowering in this way that films like I Spit on Your Grave are, and that's definitely in the exploitation genre. I Spit on Your Grave. But again, like people are very divided on that. Some will say that it is a note to empowerment against abuse. Others will say that this is just a gore fest. And yeah, I'm like, you can. They're both correct. They're both correct, and it's what it means to the person. And if last but certainly not least, listing my favorite directors and my favorite films by them, I would have to say Guy Maddin. I love Guy Maddin. He is definitely not, the least of my favorite directors either, but I was looking at my DVD shelves and and trying to but I keep forgetting that I put my Guy Maddin and my Derek Jarman in this corner toward the bottom, just so that I always know where they're at and I don't have to go looking for them. Like, they've got almost this whole little cubby hole on the shelves to themselves, is my Guy Maddin and my Derek Jarman. And also my Tim Burton and John Hughes. Yeah, I put all those together, so I'm gonna go with that. I'm gonna say my favorite John Hughes movie after my favorite Guy Maddin. But my favorite Guy Maddin, I would have to say, is his Dracula. And a lot of people have very mixed feelings about that, especially considering that Guy Maddin, um, he's not the biggest fan of Dracula, but he was approached by the original choreographer, who developed the Dracula ballet for the Winnipeg Ballet, and he's also from Winnipeg, so he likes to throw a lot of Winnipeg into his films, and I love that. I love that he brings his hometown that he loves so much and gives it its own flavor. And I've got another friend from Winnipeg who I asked her, like, half jokingly but half serious as well, if Guy Maddin paints an accurate picture of Winnipeg. And she says, in his own way, yes, very much so. But yeah, I love his Dracula because I see what he was doing with this, and for somebody who is admittedly not a huge fan of the Dracula story, I think he nailed a lot of things very well with it. So yeah, it is a film adaptation of a ballet, so it is silent, and and he's done silent movies too, but he uses film technology that does not really go beyond about 1933, and that's just how he makes his movies. He made this as a silent movie with intertitles for some of the dialogue, so as a ballet. And so a lot of the actors are professional dancers first, and um and others are more like stage actors first. So he's and they have at least some kind of understanding of the pantomime that was often involved in silent film acting, because the film cameras at the time, they didn't pick up sound, so you had to convey the emotions and dialogue. Well, throw in the intertitles for the dialogue. That was figured out very early on, how to do that. And or at least for some of the dialogue. But you had this very exaggerated, expressive, pantomime based acting, basically. So a lot of silent film stars, like if they weren't dancers, some of them were dancers first, with like some background in pantomime. Some of them were vaudeville with a huge specialty in pantomime acting and mime acting. Some of them were artists and fashion models before they were silent film actors. So people who were very much about being expressive with their faces and their bodies to make up for what the camera technology couldn't do. So, and Guy Maddin loves that era of film, and it really comes out, like, even his sound movies, even his sound films. When he wants to do a film in sound, he encourages the actors to go for that over the top, Nicolas Cage like pantomime acting, to just it's like, yeah, I know this is going to be a sound picture, but I need you to be like this, because that's the kind of film we're making. That's the kind of expression that we need. And my so yeah, I love his Dracula because, not only because I love silent film and it is a silent film, but because I see what he was doing with Dracula. And I think for somebody who is not a huge fan of the story of Dracula, I really could not have picked a better director to do that kind of avant-garde ballet based Dracula film. Uh, like really, if you're going to pick a director who will do a film adaptation of an avant-garde ballet version of anything, like Guy Madden would be at the top of my list. And and I know there are people who are going to be all like, whether right now in a minute or so, or like once this thing gets archived and they rewatch it because they're expecting a train wreck that's not going to happen. No, I'm not a fan of David Lynch. Um, about half of his films, I think he's just trying way too hard. Like he's training wheels for surrealism. And like really, he's training wheels for surrealism. And where he is training wheels for surrealism, Stanley Kubrick is, like a child's tricycle for surrealism. Like this is like, yeah, it technically, um, and the other half of David Lynch's films is like, okay, I'll let you exist. I'll let you continue to exist for this. And, but I think it could have been better. I think it could have been done better by somebody who actually understands how surrealist and work in film. And but this was an acceptable effort. So yeah, my favorite John Hughes movie I would have to say is Some Kind of Wonderful, and not just because I'd mentioned in earlier in the Q&A before first I got cut off and got back on. So not just because I love March Violets and they have a cameo in Some Kind of Wonderful, but I often see that kind of brushed aside as just like, oh, it's just a gender swapped version of Pretty in Pink, which, yes, it certainly began life as. But John Hughes also kind of wanted to go with his original ending. He thought that was much truer to life and would be much more uplifting in a very realistic way. So, oh yeah, that's a criminally underrated film, I think. And yeah, it's got this like little like let's tweak a couple things here and there for comedy about it. Um, but like what movie, especially one directed at teenagers, doesn't do that? There's things in Breakfast Club, and that is a classic film that like they should never remake it. I don't know if anybody's talking about it, but they might. And maybe somebody's going to see this and suddenly get that idea in their head that, oh, maybe we can remake the Breakfast Club. And I'm like, no, it will fail. And it will fail because some things are just a product of their time and place. And while that is a very timeless film, there's literally nothing I would change about it. I mean, yeah, people make arguments about, the weird kind of misogynistic angles that are in a lot of the John Hughes films, but um but at the same time, it's like it never seems to come from a direction that is malicious. It's more like observational and oddly sympathetic to like even like Molly Ringwald's characters in this, like all even the women the young women characters in his films that are kind of the brunt of this. You get this sort of sympathetic vibe to it. Like people want to bring up 16 Candles about the weird sort of misogyny in the John Hughes teen movies, and I'm like, they were both wasted in that, right? Like they were both explicitly wasted as per script. Neither of them remembered what happened, and that's one of those things. It's like what do you call this then? Like, I mean, technically, she was the only one who was of age as well. Like Anthony Michael Hall's character in 16 Candles was not even old enough to drive. You think it was like 14, so it's like, uh oh yeah, yeah, he absolutely set the tone for having these kind of adult conversations about teen films. Uh oh, wait. Yeah, I would love to see. Oh, Coraline. Wait, I'm not sure. Um Where are we talking now? Hi there, Little Witch. Good evening, folks. Uh, oh yeah, yeah. Tim Burton definitely made Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Yeah, that was like I think that was his first full length film that he directed by himself. Uh, Tim Burton. I don't think Tim Burton was involved in Coraline directly. I think other people who worked on Nightmare Before Christmas with him were involved in Coraline. Uh, are you gonna? Uh, I am not. I'm not a huge fan of slasher horror. I don't know if somebody was asking about the new Child's Play, but I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of slasher horror. That's more Queenie Todd's thing. Breakfast Club, OMH, that doesn't make me any younger. They're talking about making part two of Beetlejuice. Whatever happened to that? It wasn't necessary to make a part two of Beetlejuice. You know, they made the animated TV show. That was it. That was what you needed for Beetlejuice. Uh, it doesn't sound like a good idea unless they go for a totally different family. Uh, uh, oh, Mulholland Drive. Oh God, yeah, Mulholland Drive. Oh God, Mulholland Drive and Lost Highway are two David Lynch films that I just keep asking myself, why do these films exist? You know, I keep asking myself, why do these two films exist? Why did he even do this? And it's and I've got a friend who loves David Lynch, and he says that he had that reaction to Lost Highway at first, but it was after the third viewing of Lost Highway where he suddenly understood what Lynch was doing with it. And I said to Charles, why would I put myself through that? I mean, you put yourself through that because you appreciate what David Lynch does for better or for worse. And I always think that somebody better could do what David Lynch has done well, you know, or at least decently. Like, I always think somebody else could have done it better. Like, even if they're going to go in a similar direction to Lynch, I always think somebody else is going to do it better. And, you know, maybe I'll make my own, you know, since I'm talking about movies, I don't know if I want to, like, put this in a separate video, as, you know, later as well. Like I mentioned, doing separate videos for a couple other things I've brought up during the live streams that I've done. But I have a short list, and it's only 3 of them because some people I just learned not to trust anymore about movies. And these are 3 movies that broke my trust in people recommending movies to me. And this is a list of movies people thought I would love, but that I hated instead. And number 1 on that list is Eraserhead. And the reason I hate Eraserhead, and I probably would have at least kind of enjoyed Eraserhead and thought it was decent, if not for 2 things. The first is it's so overly hyped. People, like, especially amongst people about my age, which is like, you know, young X, oldest, you know, pre-millennial, you know, Gen Y kind of thing. You know, I've also seen a lot of Xers who, you know, like older Gen X people who insist that Eraserhead is brilliant and it's one of the greatest films ever made. And like I said, I see David Lynch as completely, I see David Lynch as just like training wheels for surrealism at his best. And this is what that movie felt like to me. It's like, okay, I see what he's doing here. And, you know, he's clearly like either about to get married or about to have a baby. And it, you know, and if he's only just about to get married, it's making him think about children and childhood and raising a child. And now it's making him question, like, having an existential crisis. This is what that movie is about. It is about David Lynch about to have a baby and freaking out. That is what it is. But that brings me to number 2, is David Lynch still to this day refuses to acknowledge what Eraserhead is about. Even though people have, you know, sourced statements onto Wikipedia and IMDb that, and like I said, these are sourced statements, so I know it's at least halfway trustworthy, is David Lynch has admitted that during the writing and filming process for Eraserhead, his girlfriend was 5 months pregnant. And that is where I just like, go, dude, quit your bullshit. Everybody knows what this movie is about. Just be honest with us. Just be honest. Like, oh, yeah. Eraserhead is like one of the most overrated things. And, if it wasn't for people who hype it up and think it's brilliant, I would have thought it was decent. I would have thought it was like, I'm like, okay, this is a little training wheels for, it's like baby's first surrealism movie. I can get it. This makes sense to me. But it's also the fact that he's just not honest about what this movie is about and what it means. And it's so obvious to anybody with enough skills to at least go on to Wikipedia and at least see the chronology of the births of his children and, lined up with his movies and put the pieces together. Everybody knows what this movie is about, and he won't be honest, and that's what makes me hate it more. Like I said, I would have been like, it's okay, it's not worthy of the hype before, but it's the fact that he digs his heels in and refuses to acknowledge what it's about. And that's where I'm just like, no, this is a loathsome movie at this point, because he still has fans who will back him up on this. It's like, oh no, it's about whatever your mind leads you to believe it's about. I'm like, no, it's about a man having his first child and going into existential crisis mode. That is what this is about. Everybody knows it at this point. And the only people who don't know that at this point have either never seen Eraserhead or they're lying to themselves about what Eraserhead is about. Like, seriously, just quit the bullshit, David Lynch. Number 2 on the list of films that friends of mine thought I would love, but I hated, is Donnie Darko. Granted, the first time I saw Donnie Darko, it was the director's cut. And this is where we get into this training wheels for, for philosophy kind of thing, because that's more like a training wheels for existentialist movie, or existentialism. Much like I Heart Huckabees is training wheels for existentialism, but at least they're honest about it. At least the filmmakers were honest that, oh yeah, we were just doing a existentialism 101 kind of story, and this is what we came up with. Oh yeah, like I hated the director's cut for Donnie Darko because it literally, I just came off of that like hating that movie so much, thinking that it talked down to me. It talks down to its audience. The director's cut does, and I'm like, there was a reason. Like when I finally saw, like people were telling me after I was going on about how much I hated Donnie Darko, and they said, then somebody eventually asked me, which version did you see? And this was a person I generally trust in about their taste in movies. I hated the director's cut of Donnie Darko because it talks down to the audience. Somebody said that they'd seen the cinematic cut first, and then they saw the director's cut, and they came away with the same feeling I had, that the director's cut talks down to its audience. And so and like I said, I already kind of trusted this person about their taste in film already. So where's my water bottle? It was here, wasn't it? I think so. Maybe. Yes. So because I trusted them and because they had said that they had seen the cinematic one first and then the director's cut, I was like, okay, I'll give the cinematic cut a try. And I think it was still on Netflix at that time. So I did rewatch it, and it was okay. Again, it feels very much, baby's first existentialism, film. And that's okay. It's decent. It's a decent effort. But the director's cut is just so utterly loathsome in how it talks down to the audience about what this story is trying to say to you. I'm like, when I saw the cinematic cut, I'm like, there's no reason that he needed to go back and put in all of these like hand-holding, spoon-feeding, jogs through the storyline to say what he wanted to say with this. There was no reason for that. There was a reason that the studio cut these bits out in post-production to reel him in. Like, this is what happens when, like, sometimes a director really needs to be reeled in. Just like Anne Rice really needs an editor, even at this point in her career, because even people who love Anne Rice, I've got a friend, Tony, he loves Anne Rice. And part of it is just like this kind of guilty pleasure where he's an ex-Catholic and she's an on-again, off-again Catholic, and he sees the familiarity of Catholicism woven throughout her stories and books. And so, some of it is a guilty pleasure. Some of it is just that familiarity of, this is something that I grew up with, and this, and it's familiar with me. to me. And so, like I said, he's even a diehard fan, but he even says that, yeah, she really needs to be reeled in by an editor, since Memnock the devil. Like, this is like, no, somebody needs to reel her in. Somebody needs to just, like, cut some bits here, readjust some things here, maybe put this part of the chapter first, because that way it's not talking down to the audience who's reading it. And that is what I felt about the director's cut of Donnie Darko. It is so loathsome in how it talks down to its audience that I don't even know how this got a release as a director's cut edition. My guess is it's only because of the fans who just, love it so much, even though, like I said, it kind of feels training wheels for existentialism, in a film, which is fine. There is room for that kind of film. There's room for, Eraserhead, if not for the fact that it's so overhyped and David Lynch just won't be honest about the fact that his girlfriend was 5 months pregnant, they were about to have a baby, and he's freaking out. And, there's nothing inherently wrong with Eraserhead, taken as, training wheels for surrealism with some existentialist philosophy moved in as well. Like, there's nothing inherently wrong with it. It's just it's so overhyped, and it is, and David Lynch won't be honest. There's nothing inherently wrong with the cinematic version of Donnie Darko. It's just like, I don't know, it's cute. It's not something I would watch, repeatedly, like its diehard fans like to. But it's cute, if it comes to the midnight movie, I might go out and see it, just to have the midnight movie experience with it. I saw Beetlejuice in midnight movie with some people one time, including my friend Autry. She's moved back to South Carolina. She's really sweet. We found out after she'd moved back to South Carolina that we'd met our friend Laura Jean through, different avenues, but we both knew her. And that's funny. But yeah, like, some movies, like, I don't necessarily need a midnight movie experience, but it's just fun to go see them anyway. And if I knew somebody who wanted to go see Donnie Darko at a midnight movie, I'd just like, sure, yeah, I can cough up to $7 for that at the state or whatever. As long as it's the original cinematic release. If it's going to be the director's cut, I'm like, no, you can't make me watch that again. I will put my foot through the chair in front of me at the theater, because that, like, no, that is a loathsome film. The director's cut did not need to be released. It treats its audience like we're stupid. And I, for one, am not stupid. I trust the average Donnie Darko fan not to be stupid. Like I said, I mean, yeah, it's not my thing. It feels a little bit basic for me. Obviously, like, I love Guy Madden. I love trying to figure out all these weird little things he's doing, and if he's trying to say anything, and if he is, what is he saying with this? I love that. Like, Guy Madden is my kind of surrealist. And that's where I feel David Lynch comes up a little short. Sometimes I see what he's I do see what he's saying, and it feels like either he's rushing it, or that it's just like, or sometimes I feel like he's not exactly trying to say anything, or what he is trying to say makes sense only to him. And that just feels a little bit, it feels a bit much. Like he's making this for an audience of one. And I'm like, you do yours. Shine on, you crazy diamond. Third on my list of movies that people thought I would love, but I ended up hating. And might surprise people, not so much with the fact that I hated it, but why I hated it. And that would be Human Centipede. And now I wait for Queenie Todd to say something in response. Because I know slasher films are something Queenie Todd really enjoys if they're still on. I don't know if you use they and she interchangeably. I know you don't mind associating with the ladies' experience, but I know last I saw you kind of prefer they, being a bit bi-gender, non-binary bit. But yeah, I hated Human Centipede, and I hated it for what is probably going to sound like a really convoluted reason. I love John Waters. John Waters was one of the first directors that I really fell in love with, even though he's no longer in my top tier favorite directors. But he's still, somebody that I find his films very comforting. because there's something that I loved in high school. And see, what I hated about Human Centipede is I feel it didn't go as far as it could have. Like, there's something about Human Centipede and the way that it's made and the way that it's written and filmed that I feel like they're really trying to tap into that John Waters kind of vibe, if you know what I'm talking about. This Mondo, pseudo, kind of this Mondo gross out kind of thing that was really popular in the 70s. I see it's trying to tap into something very John Waters, something very Cannibal Holocaust, though not in the mockumentary vein. And I see them trying to tap into that. I see them trying to tap into something, in that so over the top kind of thing, but they don't go far enough. Like, I think it could have worked for me. I think Human Centipede could have worked for me if it was done in this campy, over the top way like John Waters. Like, if John Waters had made Human Centipede, especially in like 1973, this could have been brilliant in how ridiculous it was. If it had been like a 1973 John Waters film, it could have been that. But they didn't go there. They didn't go far enough for me to appreciate what they were doing. It's one of those things that I could have like enjoyed it as a campy midnight movie, gross out kind of thing that reminded me of the John Waters films and Cannibal Holocaust and all the Mondo, horse shit from, when I was a teenager and, just kind of into gross out horror just for the sake of it. But it didn't go far enough. It did not go far enough. And it just made me, like, at the end, I felt wasted. I felt like I'd wasted my time on Human Centipede. Like, at the end of it, I seriously look to the guy I was dating, not my most recent ex, the one I was dating before Isaac, Calvin. And Calvin and I were in this weird kind of, situation where, much like Isaac and I, it's like, on my end, it kind of felt like an ex, partner kind of thing. They're both going through their own emotional bullshit. Isaac is going through so much more emotional bullshit than Calvin ever has, and I kind of appreciate like how relatively together Calvin was in comparison, but still, it's like, at that point, I was just like, I turned to Calvin and he's looking at me and he's like, what did you think? And it's clear he thought I should have had some kind of enjoyment of Human Centipede. But instead I said, that is 90 minutes of my life I am never getting back, and I don't think I can have sex with you tonight. Maybe tomorrow or something, because I need to recover from this, and I need to recover from it. And this was shortly after David Bowie died, and I said, I need to recover from this with David Bowie's groin all over the screen, and if I start crying, that's okay, because I feel something again, and I feel nothing from this. And he says, oh, come on, it was hilarious, it was great. I'm like, it was a waste of time, and I know they don't make movies on film anymore, but this was a waste of celluloid. The etheric celluloid that, where we're still using 1980s technology on that timeline, was wasted on this. The digital megabytes and gigabytes and all that went into making this film was wasted. It could have been more. It could have been stupider. That's what I want. I want it to have been stupider. I really want Human Centipede to have been stupider than it was. That could have saved it. Oh, God. Queenie Todd said something, and all you people are saying things in response to them, so I'm going to go real quick. Okay, Cackles, I love horror, period. Thanks for honoring my pronouns, too. Okay, and you do prefer, but you don't get upset. Okay, that's, I just wanted to make that clear. I default to they if I can't remember for somebody. So, which I figure is better than, defaulting to how they seem to be presenting on any given day, because there are people who think I'm presenting more she and all that, and I'm like, no, it's he 24/7, just like Peter Green. Or not Peter Green. Peter Green was the guy from Fleetwood Mac who went crazy. Peter Burns. More into monster movies and transformation. Okay. Yeah, oh, yeah. Slashers are so repetitive. And, oh, yeah. Human Centipede creeped me out so bad. I had to sleep with the lights. Oh, God. I'm not like I'm not laughing that you had to. I'm laughing because I oh god, like the last one movie like that I saw was Child's Play. Though to my credit, I was 9 when I saw it, and my older sister thought I could handle it because I was one of those 9-year-olds who was regarded as relatively mature, and I could not handle it. I was terrified of baby dolls for the rest of my life. I still can't stand baby dolls. That's probably, I don't know. I never wanted kids even when I was a kid, but my younger sister always had her baby dolls, and so she clearly wanted at least one kid, but um oh, Exorcist. I didn't see The Exorcist until I was well into adulthood. But I read William Blatty's novel first, and um so I don't know, like Exorcist, the film version is one of those ones that I've got some mixed feelings about. I know that there was only so much they could do with a movie, only so much they could put in for time constraints. Because even though some films go over on, like some films are 90 minutes, some are half an hour, some are 3 hours. A lot of times a film like the studio will really push for a shorter time limit. So I've got mixed feelings about The Exorcist. I saw the re-release 10 whatever years ago, but it's because I read the book first. I still have mixed feelings about it, even that one. Never had a desire to watch Human Centipede. Yeah, it does not need to be watched. It really does seem like it's more about the shock value than about actually being a good movie from what I've heard. Oh, yeah. And like I said, even the shock value, they could have, like John Waters, like his early 70s canon that everybody loves is all about the shock and the gross out and just being obnoxious, for, because, with that whole like punk rock anything, thing, like, oh yeah, John Waters, he's totally one of the progenitors of, the punk ethic and aesthetic and stuff. And but I can appreciate what John Waters was doing just because he went that 1 mile farther and he just did it so much more. He's just like, okay, I could be really gross in this movie, or I could be the grossest thing I could imagine with this movie. I watched it in secret, hiding in the stairs. My parents were. Is that Exorcist? Oh, oh yeah, yeah. Like I said, I can understand why people love The Exorcist. Mm. It's good for what it does. It's just I read the book first, so I have mixed feelings. It doesn't take much to creep me out, and oh my god, don't get me started on Exorcist. Back when we were not used to crazy special effects in movies and no internet either, so I don't know what it is about hearing robots and demons freaks me out. I saw The Exorcist when I was oh, I can see how that would scar a preteen for life. I went back to watch The Exorcist director's cut as my first date with the father of my son. Oh, that's kind of cute, actually. I saw that on a date with my ex Scott. He's like one of my best friends now because when you're off and on together for about 5 or 6 years, live together even just as friends and roommates for a total of 12 years. So like I'm also including the time he and I were as a couple and dating in that too. If you can't break up and not stay friends. So like I said, we were off and on together for about 5 or 6 years, living together for about 12 years combined. And we had 3 cats together. And it's like, you can't break up with somebody and not stay friends unless at least one of you, maybe both, messes the hell up. Hello, new to the channel. Could you talk about damn it. Identity, sexuality, and how you navigate all these topics being such a public platform like YouTube. I don't know. I don't really navigate it. I just live, I exist, I do my thing, I make videos, I'm just a little tiny gay boy from the American Midwest from an Irish Catholic background, and I'm into gothic rock and, well, all forms of gothic music, honestly. My favorite subgenres right now would be like dark cabaret and what they call proto goth these days. Um, I don't either. I think it's pretty clear. Oh, on gender in general. People get on. People are talking about gender a lot right now because there have been a couple fairly high profile people. Honestly, I mean, yeah, I understand, why people feel the topic is getting a little dull lately, um yeah, I mean, we've got Caitlyn Jenner was a high profile in transition trans person, and Laverne Cox, she made headlines a couple of years before Caitlyn Jenner transitioned as being the first transgender woman who plays a transgender woman who is a who is a main character on a or at least a fairly significant character on a television serial, which would be Netflix Orange is the New Black. And that was a big deal because when you did see trans people playing trans people in the movies, it was usually some, tiny indie film, or, if it was on television, it was a guest role in an episode of something or other. So, yeah, like Laverne Cox, still is a big deal to a lot of people. And um, Caitlyn Jenner being so high profile in transition, that is important to a lot of people because, I mean, there are people who put off their transition because they didn't want to be rejected by friends and family or their church or whatever. And, they a lot of trans people who do succeed in committing suicide, a lot of times they'll do it because they feel they're too old to do it, at that point in their life. And, you know, her being so high profile in transition, that means a lot to people. And yeah, she's kind of a garbage human being as far as her politics and other opinions go, but I understand the importance that a lot of people see in that, it's something where, it's that little kind of flash of hope in an existence that has been typecast or stereotyped, whatever the best word for it there, as being so tragic. So I understand why Caitlyn Jenner is important to a lot of people. So I try not to come down on her too hard, except when she's, like, I definitely don't come down on her hard at all about, transitioning this late in her life. People do what they do at the time that they do it. And, hopefully it works out for the best. And, but, I've done a lot of things in my life that I think, maybe I could have done this a little bit earlier, but, I did it when I did it, and hopefully it works out for the best. Like, God, I am, I'm a musician. I'm a classically trained singer, and I have a classically trained voice. I've had choral, recital, and operatic training. But my mother was one of those types. She kind of described herself even as having given up a mediocre career in the opera chorus uh, to be a Frank Zappa groupie. So, like, me going into vocal training before I was 5, like a few months before my 5th birthday, I remember going in for voice lessons. I don't remember, like, it was before I even remember if I had a say in the matter. All I know is that I have been singing my whole life. It is a part of my identity at this point. But I haven't really, I've been in a couple bands that fell apart because of a lot of reasons. There's a lot of reasons that these bands fell apart. A lot of it has to do with a lot of it also has to do with the fact, like sometimes bands fell apart just because personalities clashed and we couldn't get along. Sometimes bands fell apart because members lived too far away and commuting for practice, was a thing that, some of us couldn't overcome. But I'm almost 40 years old, but there are musicians who were actually older than me when they started their career. there's an inspirational tag video that I keep meaning to do, and that was started by Lygia Resurrected. I mentioned her in the first attempt at me to do the live stream tonight, and Lygia Resurrected did this inspirational figures tag, and there's a good 3 people on that list who are really important to me because of the age that they were when they started their career in music. Vice versa from Poison Girls. She was 40 when she started her first punk band. Like, her children, like Gemstone and Mike Fender, original members of Rubella Ballet. The current incarnation of Rubella Ballet are also original members, but they came on a little later. It used to just be the brother and sister duo very first on. But yeah, Gemma and Mike, or is it Paul? No, it's Paul Fender. Yeah. Who the hell is Mike then? I don't know. But yeah, Gemstone and Paul Fender, they are literally her children. So like they were starting a band at the same time their mother was starting a band. Okay. Her first band. She was literally like 40 years old when she started Poison Girls. Jet Black from the Stranglers. He's retired from performing live a few years ago, but he still intends to be the studio drummer until he is no more. But he's given the rest of the band the blessing to continue on without him, even though he was the first one to start the band. Like, he is the only original member of the Stranglers left. And he was about 38, 39 when he started the Stranglers. And I mean, he'd been in smaller bands before, but that's when he started his first successful band. And like I said, vice versa. I think that was her first band ever, when she started Poison Girls at the age of 40. So older than me. And Klaus Nomi, nobody's quite sure exactly how old he was when he first started his singing career, but he was in his late 30s at the very least. And he was probably in his early 40s when he died. He was born in the Bavarian mountains during World War II, and they didn't have a birth certificate on him. So he, of course, emigrated before that was as huge of a deal. Like, he had his German passport, and they had what they could find of a birth certificate for him. But yeah, like, Klaus Nomi was about my age when he first started recording music. So yeah, like, I believe me, I understand how important Caitlyn Jenner can be to a lot of people who think, they're too old to do this. So, I understand that much. I don't understand people who stand for Caitlyn Jenner, even if they don't agree with her politically. But, we all have our stuff that we just do, even if we don't have a good reason for it. Like, why the hell am I, doing, music now at my age, doing what I can about recording and all of that. And, but at the same time, the only, like, I'm pretty much just doing it for my own entertainment. Like, this is, fixate on gender. I've been hashtag genderqueer my whole life. Oh, of course you haven't. You rock it, and it's fabulous. I just don't get what makes. I just don't. Okay. It's important for a lot of people to, have to be recognized as, what they see themselves as. So, I've always been too masculine to be a proper girl. In my days, we were calling being a tomboy. Yeah. Yeah, it's more than tomboy to me, though, and I get flack for not being good enough. I mean, you're Queenie Todd. That's who you are, and a lot of the the non-binary gender identity terms that I see, a lot of it I see is just like, I don't know. I'm sure there's a handful of people, especially on Tumblr, trying to just make attention for themselves. Even, but a lot of times it's young people who are just still trying to figure themselves out. And, maybe that's going to stick with them for, well into adulthood. But I'm sure a lot of them are going to outgrow it, but even still, it's like, these are young people, just like young people experiment with their identity, and that's just how they do. There are people who are very young and they're a goth while they're a teenager, but then they feel they outgrow it later. Like, like they just really love the Eagles, and they're just not so much into Switchblade Symphony anymore, and that's fine. Guess I'm the boring one in the group. I'm just gay. Yeah, I'm just a gay boy too. My passport says so. Thank you for speaking for Yeah. Yeah, goths could use some visibility. Ruin, on your video about letting your hair grow because of your initially I had started growing it as a dedication to Adonis, who was there are some variants of the Greek Adonis myth where let's see, it's explicitly said in one of the fragments that he laid with Aphrodite as a man and with Apollo as a woman. So Adonis is, is one of those explicitly bi-gender deities, depending on your local variants of the mythology. Goths don't really want visibility. The goth faction messed up things enough. Let us go back underground. Yeah. Goths for Sophie is a charity effort to the Sophie Lancaster Foundation is combating violence and bullying. So, and yeah, they have a stress on people picked on for being in a different subculture. And that's all well and good because, violence and of that caliber, comes in all sorts of forms. So, fine, you don't want to use Spotlight, but you want to live your life without someone threatening your life, right? Yeah. I don't know, Queenie, where I live, gods are treated with respect and even feared, so polite when they talk about us. But I know it's not the reality for everyone. Oh, hello, Johnny. I can't figure out what the DAR something. Hello, and you are very lucky then, Noir. I'm glad you are accepted. Come to Canada. The worst I had was somebody calling me witch on the street. I went from thinking I was non-binary / demi-male to realizing I'm cis that likes to play with gender and animism. Yeah, I mean, some people just work out like that. Sometimes that's just, you do what you do. I mean, that doesn't mean that the time that you explicitly identified as non-binary was a bad thing, or that it, that it was necessarily harmful to you. It just means that that was a stage in your life where you thought this thing and now you think differently. And I mean, this too could change in the future. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Who knows? It was more to collaborate online instead of just halls and BS. Oh yeah. Oh, we're talking about the Sophie Lancaster calendar. Yes, that calendar was that was a collaborative effort. That's a collaborative effort with a lot of prominent enough internet goths who who wanted to raise money for the foundation. and contribute to the community rather than take from it and use it for one's own gain. It was a charity effort, collaborating amongst, like-minded people who, oh, good, every year. I would not mind collaborating or, contributing to that for an upcoming year. I don't know about, the one for 2020, but, I initially started my YouTube. You can tell from some of the earlier videos, where I'm just kind of singing into the camera and doing weird little experimental music kind of things, that I initially started this with the hope of bringing some attention to my music, but then I was seeing people who have dedicated music channels that get very little traffic. Like, you pretty much have to be an established musician already to have your music channel get any traffic whatsoever. So, I mean, maybe not any whatsoever in the most literal sense, but, to have substantial traffic, you have to be already established as a musician for, a music-focused YouTube channel to have, significant attention. So I figured, okay, I'll just branch out and do some, goth related topics and vloggy type stuff and all of that. And, hopefully it will help draw some attention to, to my music. Oh yeah, MySpace was better for independent musicians. Yeah, Facebook had tried to do what MySpace was doing for music for a while. I don't know if you can still upload MP3s to a band profile, but they wanted so many degrees of identity verification just to upload an MP3 that it made a lot of musicians really uncomfortable of having to first off scan your goddamn ID in there. What if somebody gets a hold of this somehow, and all of that. Especially women and LGBT musicians. So okay, we are in year 3 now for 2020. Gospelsophie.com is being created. Oh, nice. Yeah. If there's anything you could ask for me to contribute, I would be all about that. I mean, I'm certainly getting a fair amount of attention right now. Seymour, probably all goths, old and new, listen to other kinds of music too. Oh yeah. I don't know. My music collection is not strictly gothic rock in the slightest, and honestly, I've heard of Drab Majesty and Boy Harsher. Boy Harsher is going to be playing in Detroit or the Detroit area. I don't know if it's going to be technically in Livonia or Royal Oak or something. Oh God, is it this month already, or is that in May? Or am I thinking of somebody else who's going to be playing in May? Yeah, I don't know if I'll be able to go to that, even if it is in May, because I do not see well enough to drive. I live a good, let's see, if we're driving 20 to 30 minutes from Detroit. So let's see, let's about double that for a Greyhound, though it's probably closer to 30 or 40 minutes on Amtrak. Yeah, it's about 30 minutes on Amtrak. So, because it's pretty much direct from here to Detroit on Amtrak. But if it's not going to be in Detroit, then I'll have to find another way to, get there from Detroit. I don't know. It's just so convoluted for me to try and get to any events in Detroit on my own that, I just go to the event page on Facebook and just ask if anybody's coming from my area and, would be willing to pick me up on their way. And very few people do. Or if they, are coming from my area, they don't see it or something. I don't know. Oh. Oh, if you really love heathen and other kinds of dark pagan folk, I was pitching in my first live stream video for tonight, because I got cut off and I couldn't remember what I did a couple days ago to fix the connection on my end. Ols, OLS. She's on Bandcamp. She's Polish, and so I don't think that would technically count as heathen. I think Slavic. Yeah, I think Polish is a Slavic language rather than a Germanic or Norse one. But but yeah, she's really good. I get really excited about her music, and she is yeah, I get really excited about her music. Like the last release that she made that I got a Bandcamp notification about in my email, I was just like immediately like, oh, take my money, strange Polish woman who writes songs about how your plants are always there for you. She did. She puts English translations with her lyrics on Bandcamp, and this one I don't remember the exact phrasing that she uses in the translation, but the message of the song is that the people in her life let her down, but her plants are always there to comfort her and will always be there for her and for everyone. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, you are just such a trippy little spooky kind of hippie girl, aren't you? And she's just wonderful, and I get very excited about her music. So Ols, OLS, must check her out on the Bandcamp. Oh, I love Corpus Delecti too. I keep forgetting they're one of those ones that have basically been around forever, aren't they? I got a CD of theirs from a friend of mine who was moving and dumping all of his CDs off on people. So I was just like, sure, send me whatever, gothic ones that that other people do not claim. So they formed too late to... Yeah, I can see that. Late 80s, right? So in this weird little area between the gothic rock and the first major dark wave era of the 90s, which is kind of a retroactive term that a lot of people have applied since. I think it first really started gaining traction on Ishkur's Guide to Electronic Music, because I literally never heard the term dark wave before I saw it on Ishkur's Guide. I'm sure some people used it. I'm sure some people used the term dark wave to describe, more electronic based gothic rock, like Faith in the Muse, and who else am I thinking of? Switchblade Symphony, as well, and maybe some of the London After Midnight stuff, where it's pretty much just Sean Brennan in the studio with a synth and a guitar, but he gets a full band for touring. But yeah, I literally had never seen the term dark wave until I saw it on Ishkur's Guide to Electronic Music. I want to say around 2005, so around the tail end of the death rock revival era, that I'd call it, and I'm just thinking, where the hell, did he get this term from? I thought he made it up. But he says that, at least the goths he knew invented that term or used it regularly. And I'm like, who the hell uses this term? I'd literally never seen the term dark wave until Ishkur's Guide around 2005. I'd never seen that term before. It was just all goth music. It was gothic rock, and gothic rock that's heavy on the synths. And the latter is what people call dark wave now. I'm like, it's goth. It's goth. Goth is goth. Yeah, but I see. Oh yeah, Darkwave was Darkwave was born in the 20 noughts, but I see people retroactively applying it to Switchblade Symphony, some of the some Faith in the Muse, but not all Faith in the Muse, because some Faith in the Muse is it's definitely more in the realm of dark neo folk, but at the same time, nobody calls it that, because a lot of neo folk has been, a lot of people take the term neo folk and associate it with a couple of the neo Nazis who make that music, and I'm like, God damn, Nazis got to ruin everything. Yeah. Post punk is not a thing. Post punk is not a thing. Technically, the term post punk, yes, I know. Go to Wikipedia. Technically, somebody first coined it around 1978. Technically, it has been in sporadic use by the music press since about the mid 80s. But it really didn't start gaining traction until about 2010. And I think somebody I know, though I don't know off the top of my head which writer, but somebody I know who's been working in music, especially as a DJ. It's one of the other WFKU DJs, but I don't ask me who. But I remember this conversation on the DJ chat with the other WFKU DJs, and the term post-punk did not take off until somebody on Pitchfork wrote and published an article, like, trying to compartmentalize post-punk as a distinct genre, and it's not. It's not. Like about half of the bands that are on that 6-volume 6-disc 3-volume gothic rock compilation from the mid 90s. I want to say it was first released around 90. I want to say the first volume was released around 95. I want to say it was 95, 97, 99 was when they were first released. And so yeah, like that Mick Mercer gothic rock compilation, at least half of those bands would nowadays, like if this compilation came out now, about half of them, like everybody on Reddit would be like crying in their absinthe about, like, this isn't gothic rock, this is post-punk. I'm like, no, it is what we called gothic rock in the 90s. This is like Echo and the Bunnymen, like that's like light gothic rock, Same with Gene Loves Jezebel. This is like, I call it light gothic. I call it glam gothic, hippie goth. Oh, especially like what Jay Aston's been doing with Gene Loves Jezebel lately. I like his, like, he specifically calls Gene Loves Jezebel glam goth, like, or at least his version of Gene Loves Jezebel. I love Gene Loves Jezebel, and I love both Gene Loves Jezebels, and I would I don't know, I would give my right arm to see a Gene Loves Jezebel reality show. I want to see this. I want to see a Gene Loves Jezebel reality show where, like, like somebody like secretly tells each brother, like, no, we're going, because those two, they're identical twins, Jay and Michael Aston. They each have a band called Gene Loves Jezebel now. Jay is now based out in the Los Angeles area, and Michael is still based in the UK. I forget if he's rebased in Wales again, like where they originally grew up, or if he's staying in London where Gene Loves Jezebel first got really big. But they both have bands, 2 different bands called Gene Loves Jezebel. It's just when Mike tours his in the States, they have to tour as Michael Aston's Gene Loves Jezebel. And the same with when Jay tours his band in the UK and Europe, he has to tour as Jay Aston's Gene Loves Jezebel. But but these 2 brothers, they're identical twins, and they have not talked to each other without a lawyer sending messages. Like, they have not talked without a lawyer for about 20 years. And I would do amazing, terrible things to see a Gene Loves Jezebel reality show where, they frame it as, and the 2 brothers have not seen each other and without a lawyer in between for 20 years. Can we get them to speak to each other and form a band for the first time since 1989? And I'm like, yes. I want to see it. Oh my gosh. Like, DeviantArt would explode with Gene Loves Jezebel twincest fan art, and it would be a wonderful, terrible, entertaining thing. Oh my god, like, this is the over-the-top kind of nonsense that is like classic John Waters kind of humor that I think Human Centipede could have become. But, like, no, like I said, like, I hated Human Centipede because it just did not go far enough for me. It could have been so much more. But it wasn't. Okay, I'm going to bring this a little closer to my face so I can read what people have been saying. Oh, God. Yeah, Susie never really called herself goth. But she's accepted goths as her fans and her bread and butter. Like that's why goths still love Susie, even though we're kind of lukewarm about Andrew Eldritch as a person. Though any goth worth their salt would probably cut off their right hand to go see Sisters of Mercy in concert again. If that was the condition of going anyway. Oh yeah, Faith and the Muse is they've definitely had their neo folk albums, and their discography, it's incredibly diverse. uh let's see. Always considered early Cure, Susie, post punk. Yeah, I mean, technically Dexy's Midnight Runners is post punk, okay, because it's a band that formed from the ashes of the mainstream explosion of punk, when punk was considered to have sold out. There were many efforts, there were many diverse movements that came after that mainstream sellout of punk, spearheaded by McLaren and Westwood. And so, there were all of these little movements that all became, like a thing unto themselves. But if you look at all of these movements, together as an effort to reinvigorate the underground, like, yeah, it's all post-punk. Dexy's Midnight Runners is post-punk. Does that mean they sound anything like Gene Loves Jezebel or Reckham the Bunnymen? No. But for some reason, though, the other two bands, those are lumped together as like, oh, that's post-punk. That's not goth. That's post-punk. I'm like, nothing is post-punk. It's not a genre. It is not a music genre. It is a catch-all term for a diverse arrangement of movements that came from the ashes of punk's mainstream sellout. I think labels are always retroactively applied to some degree. Yeah, to some degree I can see that, because a lot of because early 80s, 79, 80, Bauhaus forming, they didn't call it gothic rock. They just, they were just doing what they were doing, and eventually got called goth. And, David J. and Daniel Ash, that's who I was brain on. Peter Murphy, Haskins, they've all lived with they're like, yeah, we can live with being goth, whatever. Gene is great, underrated. I'm hoping you're talking about Gene Loves Jezebel, because they're yes, completely underrated. I remember when we were called alternative, not goths. Eventually, goth just stayed. I kind of remember that early 90s a bit, and goth became a term because of Manson in the 90s had a rant. I can see, yes, people do still use deviant art, very much so. I mean, yeah, its heyday is definitely past, but deviant art is still very active. I mean, might need to get back on with the way Tumblr is going. Oh yeah, post being after, and punk, yeah, preceding that. It's a time frame, not a genre. Absolutely, it is not. Like postmodernism or post-impressionism. As long as it's dark and introspective, there's a good chance it is goth. I can agree with that to an extent. Oh yeah. Gene Loves Jezebel did a lot of amazing work. Oh yeah, the Doors were definitely the first band to be described by the music press as gothic rock. Nico was getting that credit for a long time. Though I guess more that it was her album, The Marble Index, that was described as incredibly gothic and foreboding. And but yeah, if we're looking for the term gothic rock, the Doors were the first to get that term from the press. They, I don't know. I can definitely see how the Doors influenced gothic rock, and as far as like what is and is not goth, like I would, like there's a clear point where we can say that gothic rock is a genre, and the quintessential gothic rock sound, really, it did come out of Leeds around 1982-83. And I'm going on about that in my 3, possibly 4-part series about gothic metal and the enigma of Fields of the Nephilim, because there is a lot of gothic rock that is kind of gothic rock in that it sounds more like that quintessential gothic rock sound, or at least closer to it, than it sounds farther away from it. So that quintessential gothic rock sound with we've got Sisters of Mercy from Leeds, Red Lorry, Yellow Lorry, also from Leeds, and March Violets, again from Leeds, which is why I keep referring to the Leeds bands and the Leeds sound, because, those three bands, they all typify and they all came from Leeds around 1982, thereabouts, give or take a year for, first single on at least one of them. I know Red Lorry, Yellow Lorry, their first single was out in 82, and I can't remember if Sisters of Mercy, if their first single was 81 or 82, and March Violets, their first single was 83, but, so yeah, like, 1982 approximately, in Leeds, we've got that quintessential gothic rock sound emerging, and it's from these bands who all, have a very similar background, very similar interests as well as influences on their own music and lyrics and everything. But then we've got bands that came a little bit before that from London, like, Bauhaus, a lot of Sex Gang Children from that period, where it sounds more like gothic rock than it doesn't. So it's gothic rock by association or by lack of a more a lack of a more specific term. Like, gothic rock is accurate enough to describe Bauhaus. Gothic rock is accurate enough to describe where am I going with this? Well, Fields of the Nephilim was, the band I'm really, trying to tackle with this series. And I like to kick myself a lot for falling to the wayside on that series. And I need to film chapter 2 at the very least, because chapter 1 is already up. And chapter 1, if you don't, if you want to get a little quick synopsis before, The Cures for Pornography, that is much closer to gothic rock than it's further away from it. So chapter 1 of Gothic Metal and the Enigma of Fields of the Nephilim, I've subtitled that Before Gothic Rock. So we've got this very early 80s reference, and I'm talking about how, first off, I'm talking about what was happening, like, literally all over the world. And so in the UK, there was the Batcave Club in London, and a couple other clubs that, a lot of those bands played at, and a lot of bands that became most closely associated with the Batcave. If you want to split hairs, their genre was not gothic rock. Specimen is just a straight up glam band, but they played with the media, the music press decrying glam is dead. So they dressed like a glam band that was dead. That's Specimen. Alien Sex Fiend, they're just like electronic synth based what the fuck punk. Like, that is like, I straight up call Alien Sex Fiend on a synth based what the fuck punk. That is what Alien Sex Fiend music sounds like. It's more like punk than it is like gothic rock, if you want to be straight up honest. But it is based in synthesizers, which a lot of gothic bands which a lot of gothic rock bands embraced far sooner than punk bands did. So what the hell? Alien Sex Fiend is like the Primus of goth music. They're their own genre. And if you can find the Winamp player for your computer, or if you're an old person like me who still has Winamp, they have the drop down box for genre, and Winamp developers call Primus their own genre. And it's like Alien Sex Fiend is therefore like the Primus of goth music. They're their own thing. There's no other way to describe Alien Sex Fiend. They are their own genre. They're the Primus of goth. Because it's like, what the hell music is this? What do I call this? It's almost like punk rock, but not. It's got synths coming out of the wazoo, but it's not like the futurist bands from the 80s around the same time that were not goths, like Depeche Mode. Depeche Mode, they called themselves futurists. There was a futurist movement of electronic music, but a lot of people just call that new wave and synth pop now. And Ishkur's Guide is really egregious of trying to call new wave a sub-genre of synth pop. And I'm like, at some point, no. Like what the hell is it about, Gary Newman, that's new wave, and that's definitely new wave, and Erasure, that is definitely synth pop. I don't know where the line is that you're drawing here, Ishkur. Let's see, in Los Angeles, there was the death rock scene. Death rock is not a genre. It is a local scene that was that developed independently of what was going on in the Batcave, but at the same time, simultaneously, and they had their own, they brought in a lot of the same influences, but also other influences that only came from that place and time. And, like you hear about these, death rock bands, and it's like, okay, like this is clearly not a genre. This is not a genre. This is an independent scene that developed at around the same time that later became subsumed by a worldwide Gothic subculture. Because Roz Williams would go on record, in interviews saying that, oh, like what they were doing in LA, he called it death rock, but they were doing something almost exactly the same in England, and they called it goth. And then they go to Australia and it's called something else, and they go to France and it's called cold wave. It's not subgenres. It's a scene. It's a local scene. And, and plus, like, if you want to say like, oh, well, the death rock bands are a death rock genre, I'm like, well, yeah, but then you've got bands as different as Community FK, the first lineup of Christian Death, Superheroines, and 45 Grave, and Mephisto Waltz. Mephisto Waltz, if you want to go by what their music sounds like, they were doing, that Leeds sound Gothic rock, but they were doing it independently of the Leeds scene. They had their own sound compared to the rest of the, quote unquote death rock bands. Superheroines was a straight up punk band. Eva O, she considers herself an overlap punk metalhead who just, was involved in the death rock scene. And, she's very insistent. She's not a goth. She's a death rocker. And a death rocker to her is, one of these underground, proto-gothic punks. That's what it is. It's not a genre. It's not a subgenre. It's a scene. It's a local scene. Then we've got, in New York City, there was what they were, and they straight up called themselves no wave, as, like a rejection of not only punk, but a rejection of what the media was already starting to call new wave, this new wave of punk. And they're just like, we're not new wave, we're no wave. We've got nothing to do with that. We've got Lydia Lunch, the Del Byzantines with Jim Jarmusch on, what was he playing in the Del Byzantines? I don't know, but he's a director now, and for quite some time. And, who else was considered one of the quintessential no wave bands? Oh, like Klaus Nomi was associated with no wave. Richard Hell was associated with no wave. Like so many people were associated with no wave, but it was like its own thing, independent of LA, but just creepy and spooky enough. Especially with Lydia Lunch. That woman is spooky as shit. But, just outside New York, though it's often, lumped in with the New York scene, we have a lot of it coming up out of New Jersey, though, the Cramps, I don't remember exactly where they were from, but the Cramps and horror punk, a lot of it was out of New Jersey, with Rosemary's Babies and oh shit, tip of my tongue, Plasmatics, that was horror punk, that, and 45 Grave and the Cramps and the Plasmatics, these are like nearly identical sounding bands if we want to talk genre. But, like something, but it's like only Habit because they came from Los Angeles. That's why 45 Grave is death rock, but Plasmatics, Rosemary's Babies, oh no, they're horror punk because that's what they came out of. And I'm like, there's literally like, like if we're going to split hairs about genre, like genre is not scene. Genre is not your local scene. Your local scene is, an amalgamation of a lot of different things and different sounds and different people. And, subculture and, like subcultures have associated scenes, but genre is how music is composed and written and sounds. Genre is not scene. Let's see. And then in Australia, we had the Swampies with, the Triffids, Nick Cave, Scientists. In my heart, a place called Swampland, 9 parts water, 1 part sand. And that was, again, we have these musicians doing things very similar, sometimes almost identical to what's going on in the rest of the world that, later congeals into the broad worldwide Gothic subculture. And, these were all coming about at the same time, but in different places. But they sounded so similar in some ways, yet in other ways just different enough that you could kind of argue that some of these are clearly a different genre from the others, but it's all related. It's all connected, and it's all what came about independently, but at the same time, similar enough that we've got this independent, semi-removed subculture within the parent cultures. And that's what makes it a subculture more than, and that's what makes a subculture more than the local scenes associated with it, and more than the genres, and subgenres and sub triple subgenres associated with the subculture. That's what makes a subculture different, is that it is what happens when, a lot of people in different places who are doing almost the same thing independently of each other meet, and new minds and values emerge. And that is why I like constantly bring up the anarcho-punk origins of gothic rock in the UK, because this is part of the values. Like, they were doing the same things in the death rock scene in LA around 1980. They were doing the same thing. It was the same anarcho-punk kind of thing, where, like they're rejecting the system. They're rejecting the system, not only that punk rejected, but rejecting the system that chewed punk up and spat it out. It's a rejection of all of these, ass backwards, exploitative values. And that's why it all came together in the ways that it did. And I got to, I'm going to back up because I got a point where I got to read a little bit and have a drink of water for all that talking I was doing with the whole dry mouth thing. Let's see. Yes, trying to explain death rock to people is a pain and a half. And I'm not even an original death rocker. I am a death rock revivalist, 89 to 2005, deathrock.com, regular. Yes, I was not using my name there. I was using a pseudonym on the message board like a lot of people. And I've gone through many changes and growth since then. Then there are weird bands like Support Eternus and the Ensemble shit. Oh yeah, what the fuck is Support Eternus doing? Anna Varney is doing Anna Varney, and and she's definitely more like a goth than she is unlike goths. So we're just yeah, you're one of us. We love your crazy, weird, creepy music. You are so scary, and we love you. And yeah, oh yeah, the argument can be made that rock and roll was, a local scene at one point. That was, and that's where the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, is why it's in Cleveland, because that's where the DJ credited for coining the term came from. Oh yeah, well, I mean, that's what I'm talking about with Johnny Dirktronic. Yeah, at some point it's splitting hairs, and that's kind of my point, that we can split hairs about what a genre is, all things considered. But, at the end of the day, I'm just I know what goth music sounds like when I hear it, and I know goth music when I hear it. And yeah, we can split hairs on what a genre is compared to other things and all that. Did David Bowie coin the term new wave? I'm gonna have to see a source on that. Oh, I love All Lovers Left Alive. Oh god, the movies. There's a reason why so many people were actually really surprised that here's me being an old school alt gothic veteran again. I was doing this one of the last live streams I did was what was happening. So I was talking about convergence in alt gothic, and one of the things is I know a lot of people who are really surprised that Detroit did not have a convergence until 24. And so, for those of you not aware, Alt Gothic was an old Usenet group. I mentioned this in my What is an Elder Goth video. Did I? I think I did. I think it was an Elder Goth. I definitely mentioned it in my video that I made almost a year ago about how goth types became a thing. It was this was just a running joke on Usenet's Alt Gothic news group for a long time. And then younger goths started coming up, very late 80s, very early noughts, like, Dorian and other people saying that, the goth types on, NetGoth. And I'm like, yeah, that was a UK website that was around, I want to say that first launched around 98, 99, or at least that's when I first saw it anyway. Oh wait, no, we're talking 87 or 97 with that. But yeah, Alt Gothic was a news group which was hosted on Usenet. That's a thing that happened when the internet was still amongst dinosaurs, and a lot of people started news groups to meet like-minded people. Like Babylon 5, that was really noteworthy at the time because that was J. Michael Straczynski. He was interacting with the fans on Usenet because he had a lot of story ideas, but he wanted to see what the fans would be most receptive to, and to see which direction to go with these ideas. And so yeah, like he was really active on Usenet. I forget the name of that sub, but it was like Bab5 was the end point. And Convergence started. The first one was 1992, I believe. Yeah, 92, because it was 2012 that I no 1993. 93. I'm probably wrong. It was 92 or 93 was the first Convergence. And then what happened is it started in Chicago, was the first one, and the 10th one, and the 20th one, and the 30th one is going to be there because that's just what we do now. It started because like WGT and Whitby were already going on in the UK, and a lot of Americans into the goth subculture at the time were not able to travel, so a lot of us just decided, let's represent our own. And so those of us who can't go to Whitby can still, like, we can invite bands out to play at, but it took a convention format rather than, like a big music festival like Whitby and WGT and all that. So yeah, it took a convention format just because it was a bit easier to, for the people who it was easier for the people involved to organize rather than to find an adequate field and all that for a more music festival campground style thing, which is a lot more common in Europe. So yeah, Convergence started about 25 years ago this year. No, so that would have been 94 was the first one. Okay, I was wrong on both 92 and 93. So and I brought up Convergence for some reason. I don't know. I'll figure it out. People say Butthole Surfers were no wave. Yeah, Butthole Surfers were doing their own thing, and yeah, I don't think they. Yeah, Butthole Surfers definitely consider themselves more punk of some sort. Oh yeah, Wendy O. Williams. I love that woman. Here's an old Australian Swampy. Yay! I love goddamn Triffids. Oh my god, one of my regrets of being as relatively young as I am is that I got into the Triffids long after David McComb died. And that is classical music I would consider ancestral to goth. I kind of went into this with my my favorite music that I'm listening to right now. Though I'd call her more neoclassical, would be Lacey Rose. Lacey Rose. I almost said Lacey Green, but I knew that was wrong because she's the YouTuber. Yeah, Lacey Rose on Bandcamp. She's definitely neoclassical, I'd say. As far as classical music, I would consider more ancestral. I would definitely say the Impressionist composers, I would say, took went a lot of the places that I saw Gothic music ended up going. They were definitely a bit of an influence on Nico and her style. Bela Bartok, definitely. I would consider him a major influence on early goth music, especially like, when we start getting into the more direct predecessors of Gothic rock. So like, The Doors, Nico and Lou Reed and all that. Like, Bela Bartok, definitely. Bartok all the way. And Ligeia Resurrected has a lot of classical recommendations. That's her big thing. Just got here. I don't care about that person. I'm not even going to say their name this live stream. I just like, okay, so I'm a DJ. Do you mind if I share my Mixcloud with you and the others here? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. I used to do live cast of my show on YouTube. You can go and find archives from about a year ago. But then the station was having technical difficulties, and I ended up like being like forced out of the station, like login, just because the servers were like not being the servers were not being cooperative. So I would end up getting, like there was some kind of crash or another, and so I just like I gave up on the casting, and I am I really need to repair my I need to replace the power supply on my desktop computer that I DJ from, just because that is where I have my thing, and my laptop, the keyboard is not being cooperative either. I've had to slam it against a wall a couple times, my laptop, to get the S key to work, and I need the S key to work because I need the S key for my password to unlock my laptop. So, yeah. I need to try that. I need to try that. Unfortunately, my laptop keyboard it's really temperamental. I tried that with another key one time, and basically I have to tape the key on because I can't get it back on. You know what I mean? It's like I broke it and I can't get it back on. And it's got this really funky kind of design to it, because I tried to get it put back on by the guys at Jefferson Computer out I don't know, it's like a couple miles from here. It's like 20 minutes on the number 6 bus in Ipsy. I went to the guys in Jefferson Computer because I trust them to be able to do this and not charge me out my ass like they would at like Best Buy or something. Plus Best Buy, they'd try to sell me a new laptop, and I'm like, I can't afford that shit right now. I'm still trying to pay for dental work. But yeah, they could determine that key that popped off was indeed broken off, and they showed me like how it's really like not the best keyboard design. So, like I am more likely to break off the S key than I am to just be able to pop it off and pop it back on. So, yeah, Lygia Resurrected, she would be the person to ask for classical music that would be a good predecessor for the gothic sounds in the music that we listen to as goths collectively. And yet, see, that's a thing that a lot of people, like, I don't know if they're just getting pissy without hearing everybody out the whole way, or if they're intentionally misunderstanding and, like to the point that it's straw manning, but literally no. Okay, I'm not going to say literally no one, because I've seen people on Reddit doing this just to prove me wrong, apparently. I get so agitated with some of the people on Reddit's rgoth sub, but that's another story for another time. So, okay, nobody who needs to be taken seriously, and I'll put it that way, very few people legitimately say that the only goth music is gothic rock. Like, a lot of people are, going after Kai Decadence in the comments on one of my videos that's gotten some attention lately. I don't know if it's the video that's gotten attention lately, but it's at least one of them, because there's active comments on a couple of them right now. People are still getting a lot of use out of my "What is an Elder Goth" video that I did shortly after that one. But yeah, people are like getting on his case in the comments, for saying things that he never said. Like, people are saying that, he's saying, "Oh, well, you're saying only gothic rock is goth music," and he's even reiterating, like, no, he literally never said that. like, yeah, like if we want to split hairs about like genre again, and I agree, it's totally splitting hairs. It's like, yeah, like gothic rock is a bit more narrowly defined than some of it, and even some of what we do call gothic rock, it's like it's gothic rock because it's closer to that than it is to being something else, like Bauhaus or Fields of the Nephilim. And the reason I'm titling that series that I'm working on, that I really need to film chapter 2 of, because whatever. Yeah, I'm burning sage. Um, is Fields of the Nephilim straddles this borderline between like where does it stop being gothic rock and where does it start being prog metal? Because that's just as much an influence on Carl McCoy's sound with Fields of the Nephilim as the Leeds bands were. And you know, McCoy formed Fields of the Nephilim around 85, I want to say 84, 85. So shortly after the first bunch of singles from Sisters of Mercy and Red Lorry, Yellow Lorry, and March of Violets definitely had at least 2 out by the time Carl McCoy formed Fields of the Nephilim. So it is perfectly reasonable to say that he was influenced by the Leeds bands, and he grew up. Let's see, where did he grow up? Because I wrote it down here. Let's see. Nope. That's me going on about the Leeds bands for chapter 2. Let's see. Fields of the Nephilim formed in Hertfordshire in the British new town of Stevenage. And I go on for chapter 3 about the origins of Fields of the Nephilim. And his influences are just as much with the Leeds bands and that Leeds originating gothic rock, quintessential gothic rock sound that came out of Leeds with Sisters, March Violets, Lorries. So like his influences were just as much the Leeds bands as it was, you know, like Black Sabbath and Coven, and you know, stuff that, you know, was variously described in the early 70s as, you know, like doom and gloom, though it's now called doom metal. Or I've also seen witch rock and occult metal are things that I've seen used as well, and Wikipedia uses those terms interchangeably, though I have seen them independent of Wikipedia in the past. And so this is where we ask ourselves, like where does Fields of the Nephilim fit in with the gothic rock canon that came about in the mid 80s as, you know, that quintessential gothic rock sound? Because Fields of the Nephilim are just different enough that you start to question, because I see so many people saying, oh, well, gothic metal is not goth music. But at the same time, it's like, where does Fields of the Nephilim fit in then? Like, okay, like I can understand somebody who wants to argue that, you know, gothic metal more came about in the heavy metal scene, and that is undeniable. And you could argue that gothic metal is at most tangentially related to the gothic subculture, that the heavy metal subculture, first off, the heavy metal subculture is far more explicitly focused on music than goth ever actually. Like, goth is just as much about atmosphere as it is about sound and music. Like, it wasn't just musicians that were influencing these bands. Like, Susie wrote songs directly influenced by Edgar Allan Poe, and even like existentialism. Like, The Cure, Robert Smith wrote Killing an Arab after reading Albert Camus' The Stranger. So yeah, like, you know, there's this atmosphere of, you know, the gothic subculture is just as much about the atmosphere as it is about the literal music, which is why there is so much that's why there's this wealth of music, you know, infinite subgenres associated with the gothic subculture. Because yeah, Ghost is in this odd little category of metal where, you know, they are just so goddamn funny. They are. And I still have mixed feelings for all the right reasons about their cover of Crucified by Army of Lovers. I love Army of Lovers. They're a band so LGBT, not just LGBT friendly, but like literally every member of the band has been openly bisexual at one time. I think Jean-Pierre considers himself more gay now, but when Army of Lovers was active, or at least their heyday, I know they've reformed a couple of times, but when they were most active in the early 90s, he identified as bisexual. Like I said, I'm pretty sure he identifies as gay now, or at least he does on Facebook. Alexander Bard is just like, he's still identifies as bisexual. I don't know about La Camila now, but yeah, like I said, the core of that band was Jean-Pierre, Alexander Bard, and La Camila. They were all openly bisexual, and I'm pretty sure Alexander Bard is trans male, but that's just my own speculative conspiracy theory, like my dad thinking that France invented AIDS to get back at the US for the Middle East conflicts, which my father legitimately thought that climate change was due to the conflict in the Middle East unleashing chemical warfare. This is a legitimate conspiracy theory that my father concocted, all of his own design due to, I don't know, my dad was crazy. I've got a video idea in my head that of like, just like filming myself doing little clips of shit my dad used to say, but I'm afraid of doing that because because like what if I film that and then somebody starts to legitimately believe these crazy ideas of my father's, and of course there are going to be people who think I legitimately believe that and I'm not just goofing on my dad. Like my dad used to go into this rant about how the only people in the world who know how to properly cook frog legs are his word was Negro because he was born in 1942 and that was the nice word that you use when you're that old. And he's like going about how the only people who know how to cook frogs legs are either Florida and Creole N-O. So and I'm going to include that and like I've got that in my notebook of shit my dad used to say for a potential video idea, and I'm just like, somebody's going to get on my case about saying that. I could bleep it, but people will think I'm saying the worst N, and or I could just let it go and, risk like whatever. But I'm like, this is all shit my dad used to say. This is like, and the reason I would do something like that is to just like give a glimpse on the crazy people I came from, to just give you an idea of like how much more how much more hinged I am in comparison to what I came from. Like my dad was unhinged crazy. Granted, some of this was due to the fact that my father had a head injury when I was about 8 or 9 years old, and it gave him a stroke disorder. He had many strokes that he had to take medication for so that he wouldn't have quite as many, because like the blood would just get caught in his brain. Like a stroke is when a blood clot is trying to go through your brain and it temporarily shuts something off, and that's where you get like a stroke. And that's when a stroke happens, is like, like a blood clot trying to get stuck in, like trying to go through your brain, but it gets stuck, but it passes. And an aneurysm, like people do often survive aneurysms, or at least with, immediate medical attention. But an aneurysm is where like, a blood clot is trying to pass through your brain, but it explodes. So yeah, like that's like my dad died from a brain aneurysm that was not, addressed immediately. So, and it was almost certainly related to his stroke disorder that, he was medicating. So it was probably just one of those like, freak things. Nobody could have predicted it. So, but yeah, like that's the reason I would think about doing a shit my dad used to say kind of video, even though I would clearly, at least from where I'm sitting at, it would be very clear that I'm, goofing on my dad and having some humor at the crazy people I came from. On the other hand, I'm afraid that people would say that, especially now, like maybe a year ago, I could have done that and it would have fallen under the radar. until about now when somebody sees this and, thinks I'm endorsing this kind of shit, to try and, make me look unhinged. And I'm like, no, I was having a lousy day last week because of these reasons. And I just saw this video from this other person and I'm thinking to myself, like I had a day where legitimately everything that went bananas that day was out of my control. And that person was having these circumstances where just about everything they did that caused the circumstance was in their control. Just about everything related to the circumstance that that person is now in was within their control. And I'm like, you can bullshit your way through this all you like, hun, but very few people are falling for it anymore. At least nobody whose opinion on this should be respected. And like I said, I knew it would get attention, both good and bad, and it still seemed like a good idea to post after editing and all of that. So I'm like, if people want to read contempt as bitterness, that says more about them than it does about me. I'm contemptuous. I'm not bitter. I have no reason to be jealous. I've got beautiful antique furniture. I've got 3 cats who love me. One of them thinks he's my boyfriend and wants to watch me masturbate. Like, this cat has seriously, I thought maybe, like, one time I'm seriously trying to jack off and Nigel decides he wants to be on my lap. And I figure, okay, if I keep jerking, maybe he'll move. But he stayed there and he laid down even harder. And I'm like, okay, this is fucking weird. So it's like, yeah, my cats love me. One of them loves me way too much. But yes, laugh at me, laugh at my cat, my creepy voyeur cat. Like, I'm almost glad Nigel doesn't force his way into more videos, or at least nowhere near as many as Murnau does, because like this, everybody who remembers this would just be like, oh yeah, is he here? Is he gonna wait for you to jack off right now? I'm like, yeah, probably. That's what he does. Like, he thinks he's my boyfriend. He legit thinks he's my boyfriend. When I had a boyfriend living here, that cat even loved watching Isaac and I going at it. And like, I would tell Isaac about Nigel wanting to watch me jack off, and he thought it was hilarious when it was just me, trying to have some alone time, and this cat is just staring at me, purring very loudly, kneading on the chenille velvet blanket, and being extra like he not only takes a creepy thing that cats and dogs sometimes do, but he makes it creepier. He's doing the kneading on the velvet blanket and he's purring very loudly as he's staring very intently. So he's clearly very content and does not want me to leave his side while I'm doing this. He took a creepy thing and made it creepier, and that is Nigel. So of course, like, Isaac thinks it's hilarious when I'm telling him about Nigel watching me jack off by myself. Oh, but as soon as I'm about to go down on Isaac and Nigel gets up on the couch next to us and starts purring very loudly watching us. Oh, then Isaac thinks it's creepy and wants to throw a blanket over the cat. But yeah, like, I'm not bitter. I've got no reason to be jealous. I've got beautiful antique furniture. I've got cats who love me. All the people in my family who stressed me out are dead, or and well, I don't know. My half sister Ruby from my dad's side, she still stresses me out sometimes, but actually, like, especially now, I got wind. I was actually kind of afraid that Ruby had fallen off the wagon again, but she said that she was actually like really like she had taken my advice and really focused on her mother. Her mother had a heart attack after, oh my god. So Ruby's stepfather, so not my dad, because she and I have the same dad, but it was like her mother's second husband, actually. Like, this woman had not married after my dad until about 5.5 years ago. But yeah, like, so yeah, Ruby's stepfather had a heart attack shortly after Christmas, and her mother had a heart attack a couple weeks after. But yeah, like, Norma's actually doing pretty well right now. Ruby was getting everything situated to bring Norma home and sign up to be like a home healthcare worker. So like the disability would extend to her as like payment for that. And so like she's even like taken classes to, like, and hopefully wants to do this professionally. And I'm saying, and at first she was saying that, she probably couldn't do that because of a couple felonies on her record. She's never had jail time, but she's had felonies. I don't know how that works out. She doesn't either. And honestly, I think it's because a couple of times she was well over the 500-pound mark. So maybe the sentencing is, didn't think that, she would survive prison and didn't want that on the state. So, but that's another story for another time. But yeah, like Ruby is actually doing pretty okay right now, and that's good. So let's like even the one member of the family who was kind of sort of giving me a little bit of stress, turns out that they're actually doing a lot better than I thought they would be. So it's like I've got no reason to be jealous of anybody. I've got my harmonium, I've got my accordion. I still need to make some repairs to my accordion. I've got like I don't know. I've got a couple half-started art projects that I need to finish, but I've got my outlets for my creativity. I've got my family, which in my case is three cats, one living half sister, and an aunt in closer to Detroit. She's out in Livonia right now, and and this is the aunt who pretty much grew up with me. My aunt Karen is my dad's younger sister. My mother's side also has a sister. I also have an aunt Karen on my mother's side, but she and I don't talk. Um, Basically, I remind her too much of my mother, and she hates my mother. And my mother died some years ago, but but uh, but yeah, so yeah, like my aunt who I grew up with, who was kind of like she was kind of like a third parent, like I see polyamory couples refer to the other partner of their partner, that they had the baby with as a co-parent. And my aunt Karen was kind of like that. She was kind of like, like a tertiary parent that did not directly contribute her DNA to me, kind of like a polyamory thing, only it was my dad's younger sister. And the reason that my aunt Karen lived with us periodically off and on while I was growing up is because my aunt Karen has bipolar disorder, and she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder back in the late 60s when it was still called manic depression. So that's like she was about 19 or 20 when she was diagnosed as bipolar. But okay, it was diagnosed as manic depression, but it's being treated under the new diagnostic name of bipolar now. So there were a couple times where like she had kind of fallen off her own wagon with substance abuse, though she was more an alcoholic. She was an alcoholic. She's got 19 years sobriety this July, so I'm thinking of going out to see her on her sober birthday, which is July 5th. And I just thought that was so entertaining that when she told me about that, I laughed. And she says, well, me, got to have that one last go at it. I'm like, yeah, if anybody ever doubted, you were totally a McElroy. That's just how our family works. And so yeah, like, the people in my family who were the most stressful to me are all dead. And the people in my family who were the least stressful to me are still alive. Most of them anyway. Half of them. My eldest half sister on my mom's side, the one who lived in England, who I stayed with due to my own clinical depressive episodes when I was in junior high and high school. So I stayed with them during the summers just because, it was easier on my depressive cycles, because growing up in Metro Detroit, I did not adjust to rural Michigan very well when my dad remarried. But yeah, it's like, my family that's still alive, that, I grew up with and know and respect and care about. They're all the people who were literally the least stressful on my life. Growing up and all of that. I've got amazing cats. I have the best cats. Even my most recent ex, who it's funny. I'm friends with his two roommates. And one of them was telling me that while Isaac still begrudges me, he does miss my cats periodically. I'm like, see, even the young man who's probably going to come out as trans female in a few years just that's just totally the vibe I get off of him. Like, I knew that was a relationship with an early expiration date from the beginning, but I figured, okay, we can still have fun and see where it goes and hopefully come out as friends at the end. But he had to go ruin it and get extra defensive and start entertaining. Uh, he's going the way that some closeted trans people do, where they really dig their heels in. And I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that Isaac grew up Mormon, so he's probably digging his heels in because he sees what the TERF contingent, the trans exclusionary radical feminists, say about trans people, and so he probably thinks that sounds similar enough to what he heard from the Mormons that he grew up with, even though he is not an active Mormon anymore. But, it's something that he kind of internalized from his environment, so he's digging his heels in, and he's saying, no, there's no way I can be gay, or there's no way I can be trans, I'm gay, I'm gay, I'm gay, I'm gay, I'm gay. I'm like, okay, whatever, So, yeah, he's gotten all transphobic and everything, even though one of his current roommates is a trans woman, and she's just getting sick of his shit, that comes out every so often. But she's also seen what I see, where I'm like, he's definitely a lady in the closet. There's like, I knew that, and I told her why I thought, that, I told her about, like the couple of times he, was going on to me about, about how he identifies with femininity and womanhood, but it's not the same as identifying as a woman. And I'm like, okay, if you're putting it as identifying as womanhood, identifying with womanhood, that is far closer, than not to identifying as a woman. Like, Peter Burns identified with femininity, but he did not identify with womanhood. He identified as a gay man, just a very fabulous and flamboyant and, pretty one. He did not identify with womanhood. In fact, he was very staunch about that in interviews, that, how you look, like what you see when you looked at him, was not at all what he was and who he was and, his personal life. This was, this was just the rapping. And that is one thing that I love about Pete Burns is, like he understood the distinction, and he made it very clear that, he was a gay transvestite, basically. Who had a lot of cosmetic surgery, yes, and a lot of that though was actually reconstructive, because the first nose just his first nose job, it was because he was in an accident, but it ended up like so it didn't heal properly at all, so he went back and had it redone, and that was the first of his botched surgeries. There was a couple things, like the lips was initially like, yeah, the first time he got the lip work done, it was for cosmetic reasons, but it was so poorly done, he had to go back multiple times to get it readjusted. And so, yeah, like most of his cosmetic surgery, if we're talking about the individual procedures, a lot of that was just reconstructive work because somebody fucked up something beforehand. And but yeah, can't wait to finish more. I'm gonna read back and come back up, but yeah. I love that everybody's just hanging out, and there's no pressure, and you make the comments at me when when you want to, and you're talking about each other about things. Oh, everybody loves my cat stories. It's because my cats are weird. I have weird cats who do weird things. Yep, TMI in the house. That is very much my cats, especially Nigel. Cats. I have a pet leech. Oh, what's the cat equivalent of a bestialist? Who's gonna say it? Come on. I have a black king snake too. Oh, I'm sure that's gorgeous. Snakes are so beautiful, but I don't know. I understand that a lot of them they eat best live. Some that are raised in captivity, or born and raised in captivity, will totally adjust to um 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 frozen and all that. But I don't know. It'll be just my luck that I'd have to feed one live, and I have no problem, in theory, with feeding live mice or live rats to a snake that that is in my care. I did it with a class snake a couple times, but I was allowed to, drop it in there and then leave the classroom and not watch it eat. And just knowing that I would be living with something that I'd have to feed live food to, because that would be just my luck. I would get the one snake in the place that insists on having it live. But But yeah, that would be just my luck. I'd get the one snake that has to have it live, and I would just have the damnedest time trying to, feed it. And, I would have to go out into the hallway, and I'd come back, and it still wouldn't be dead yet. And I'd be like, God damn it, he has to eat the goddamn mouse. But yeah, snakes are beautiful, and all props to people who love to keep reptiles. You do what I cannot do. Oh, wait. Oh my gosh. Sub to Clint's Reptiles on YouTube. He's like Mr. Rogers. Oh my gosh. I have to see that then. I was singing the Mr. Rogers theme song to myself before I did the live stream. Well, the first time that was like a little under an hour. Oh god, this is going into 2.5 hours here now, plus the one before that. Uh, uh, hey, at work right now, but came to take a peek. Oh, hi! Thanks for coming to take a peek, Marie Munsterful. Okay. In the wild, make sure he has live, knocked out, praise once in a while for vitamin D. Okay. I would love it if my ones of that 20 is like the max for corn. Oh, corn snakes. You're talking about cats. Yeah, my cat is such a pervert. Frosty DeFore. Yeah, Nigel. That is Nigel. Like, Murnau doesn't do that. Murnau he's not a voyeur. He's still a weird cat who does weird things. Okay, and here's where I took a moment. Noah Velour saying that you can't wait to finish mortician school. I have a friend in this area who recently finished mortuary school. She's based out in Wayne. She's another she's on Instagram as K Morton, and then there's a number. I want to say 16. And this does not have Instagram. So I can't find her right now without my phone. But yeah, she finished mortuary school a few months ago. Got her certificate and everything, and she's really happy about that. I'm really happy for her. Called thanatology here, but yes to be an embalmer. Okay, I finally have to undo this belt. I'm really happy. I have dropped about 20 pounds since December, early December. And I'm talking like early, like the 1st of December. I had a kidney stone that I had to go to the ER about, and that was no fun at all. But they weighed me in there, and I've dropped about probably a little bit more. I weighed in today at 13 stone 10, and yesterday, or no, my last time I recorded it was 13 stone 11 point something or other. But yeah, I weighed in today at 13 stone 10, and I'm very happy about that. I mean, I know like between yesterday and today, there's probably not a whole lot about that is permanent or anything, or like permanent. I mean, like, it could be back up to 13 stone 11 even tomorrow. Is this like, day to day? That's why you gotta it's really best to weigh yourself not every day, but like maybe twice a week, ideally once a week, because that way, because like sometimes some people, their weight can fluctuate wildly between the days, and if you weigh in every day, it can stress you out. And uh like on the cosmetic aspect, oh, you're talking about mortician stuff, man. Nobody's talking to me anyway. It's probably because I just go on and on and on. Surely not on the massaging. You're talking about corpse stuff, aren't you? Mm. Yes. You stopped paying attention to anything I'm saying ages ago, didn't you? So Gotham is all. Oh yeah, like I know that's kind of one of the things I like that about, while I was rambling on about the music versus the subculture about, I don't know, what was it, hour ago, 45 minutes ago, something like that. That yeah, I mean that's what makes a subculture distinct from, a music genre or a local music scene, is like a subculture is where people of shared values, eventually discover each other and form something that is semi removed from the society that they live in. Um and like this, like I want to say, like, I'm sure there's an anthropologist out there somewhere who would want to pick up on my pseudo hypothesis here, uh and like develop it further, maybe, because I don't have a strong background in anthropology. Like, my stepmother was a social worker, so I've picked up some thing more than, pop psychology, just from talking to her about stuff. Um but yeah, like, oh, like go on digs archaeologist, or just teaching, because I've got a friend who, um she's got a PhD in archaeology. Well, I had a friend, like, she and I lost touch ages ago, like when people started flittering off of LiveJournal. She's based out in Connecticut, last I knew. Of course, then again, yeah, like I said, she was working on her PhD in archaeology, and she was teaching there. I don't know if she's tenured, if she was tenured at that school, but like I said, she was working on her PhD in archaeology, and she had been onto a couple digs in South America, and she explicitly told the school that, like, if anybody from whatever, wants to propose a dig, to the school, like, do not call her if it's Greco-Roman, even North Africa Greco-Roman. Like, she wants to do sub-Saharan digs. She wants to do South American digs. She is sick to death of Greco-Roman colonies and, Near East digs. She doesn't want to do anything like, with the cradle of civilization. She wants to, like, expand her repertoire. She wants to, um, she's yeah, I know she was on a couple digs in South America, and she was in the running for a sub-Saharan dig, and I was really excited for her about that. But that's shortly after that, was about the time that she and I started drifting apart. When I kind of, like, was starting to give up on LiveJournal because fewer and fewer people were posting. But Michigan gang, who else is Michigan then? Uh Okay, field digs, yes, never was a teacher. Uh, I'm sure the digs are exciting at the very least. If I went teaching, I would probably have a stable job. Yeah. Oh yeah, but um oh yeah, I remember her handle was Cobalt9. I want to say her name was Jen, but yeah, I miss her. Last I talked to her, she was talking she was starting to date, probably getting serious with she was openly bisexual, had a slight preference toward women, and she had put up on a dating profile that uh she is interested in people who have interesting hair and speak non-romance languages, like if they speak a language besides English. And she was starting to date and hoping it would get serious with a with let's see, her with a young woman, broadly African American, but her mother was Afro-Caribbean. But yeah, she was saying the woman she was dating, the girl's mother was Afro-Caribbean, and her father was Russian, like Russian, from Siberia. So she spoke fluent Russian, in addition to like whatever Haitian Creole or Dominican Creole, I don't know, like one of the Creoles spoken in the Caribbean, and of course English. So I think it was Haitian Creole. It might have been had a lot of French base to it, so that would have been a Romance language, which would have made her off the table for Jen if not for the Russian. So yeah, like I don't know. I kind of hope that it got serious with them and they are very happy together, being their weird little two ladies together. And I kind of wish I had stayed in contact with her. It would have been really, I don't know. I should see if I can find her and because I don't know, she was just really interesting. She was one of the most interesting people I knew online, and kind of wish I had not lost touch with her. Placing corpses of deceased ones under the house floors. Amazing how we placed them as far away from. Oh yeah. Well, that was largely a Greco-Roman thing that we've adopted. That we've actually like gone above and beyond what the Greeks and Romans did with, their desire to be distant from dead bodies. I came late to Mr. Hypothesis. Can you reset? Oh, actually, I hadn't continued with the hypothesis. I was actually like just prefacing that. Actually, like I go, I'll stay here. So, well, I was saying something about how subcultures differ from, like a subculture is more than the local music and art scenes that beget it, and so obviously it is more than like one or two little micro genre of music that. And so my hypothesis, if I could find an anthropologist who would want to expand on this, and I specify anthropology rather than archaeology, even though they're, often related fields, just because like anthropology specifically studies cultures and how cultures develop. And Jane Goodall was an anthropologist and biologist, and she specialized in studying a lot of the great apes, just to see like how similar their cultures are to humans. But so my idea is that these various subcultures that come up from colonization, and face it, the Anglo-centric culture that exists in the UK, the US, Canada, Australia, which were the main places where we saw things come up that later contributed to the global Gothic subculture. Like, there were the Swampies in Australia, the no wave and horror punk in the New York City area, death rock in Los Angeles, early goth, the Batcave Club, and the gothic rock that comes up in Leeds in the UK. And these all came about around 1980, give or take, when they all first started to congeal into their own little local scenes. And so my idea is that like when you have these colonizer based overcultures, like in the US and Canada and Australia especially, whereas the UK is, I mean, yeah, it's a colonizing overculture for the Brythonic and Gaelic tribes, but it's been so much there for centuries that it doesn't have quite the it's got a different dynamic than it does in the US, Canada, and Australia. And so my hypothesis is like when you have these subcultures that emerge from colonizer cultures, I think we're at a point right now about in history where we see subcultures developing, and not just goths, not just the Gothic subculture, but we see other subcultures developing, and maybe in some ways they're a little less developed than goth, but there are some others that are certainly more developed than goths are. where I'm talking like, various like pagan subcultures, or that later adopted paganism. Like, well, we first see neo-paganism emerging in the 19th century as kind of this like romanticized, back to nature kick, and some of it was explicitly Christian, but others were, but other back to nature style neo-pagan romantics were specifically getting into reviving polytheist religions and esoteric magics and all of that. So we see a lot of subcultures coming up around now, and I think we're at a point where we're going to see these subcultures break off into its own separate entity that is no longer semi-removed from the overculture, but eventually becomes fully removed with its own distinct cultural identity and values. And so my kind of half-assed hypothesis, because I don't have a background in anthropology, but I know a little bit about psychology, and I've picked up enough sociology here and there, in like, genuine 101 type stuff, that I think it's not too far off from how cultures become distinct from one another. Like, like Belgian culture is very distinct from, the German and the French that, has influenced it. A lot of it is Flemish in origin, but it has become its own distinct thing in Belgium. Even though a lot of people outside of there, think it's, very similar to German and French in some ways, and they speak both languages there, as well as, their own native language as well. My best friend's ashes stay on the dining. Oh, my cat, Mr. Midnight, he died 2 years ago from kidney failure, and his ashes are on a little shelf on a wall I've got over the television. Granted, he's a cat, so his ashes would probably be best in front of the television, but... Oh, wait, Queenie's leaving us all? Oh, no, I missed Queenie leave. Oh, I'm sorry I missed you leaving, Queenie Todd. Norvelours, French, Canadian, Irish, Scandinavian, Russian, Native and Hungarian. I'm assuming Native North American and Hungarian. No, or it's crazy how things have flipped. Wakes used to be in houses, and we went to the bathroom outside. Now it's reverse. That's an entertaining quote. I might have to put that in my email sig if I still send emails. There are 4. Archaeology is a division of anthropology. Okay, that makes sense to me. There are 4 divisions: archaeology, ethnology, ethno-linguistic, and anthropobiology. Okay, so anthropobiology, that would probably be what Jane Goodall specializes in then, right? Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure. I knew they were related. I just wasn't sure quite how. I have been researching on a similar topic for some time, in particular to the Australian scene, so I gotcha. Oh, yeah. Neo-paganism is growing. Oh, yeah, actually, yes, very much so. Absolutely growing each year. Yes, I met a lot of neo-pagans in Germany. Oh, yeah. And see, that's the thing that I see a lot with having my overlap in community between Goths and pagans is, oh wait, I think the documentary, or maybe another New Romantics documentary was mentioned David Bowie's. Okay, I'll have to check out a couple New Romantics documentaries then and see if what they can do to back that up. But yeah, and see, that's the thing, is like I've noticed this with a lot of neo-pagans, because I go and hang out with them as well, because that's like where my spirituality is going, and where it's been going for a long time. I was kind of interested as young as like 8 or 9 when, here's the funny story, is like a nun gave me my first book that got me interested in paganism. I was going to Catholic school and she gave me the Dallaire book of Greek myths, and that's where I really learned. And like, I know it's like written like a children's picture book, storybook, and not necessarily presented as something that is still legit, but it is kind of presented as something that was legit in the past, or at least it did to my 8-year-old self. So that's where I realized that, there are other ways to believe besides Catholicism. And I dabbled off and on with like my own kind of invented Celtic Reconstructionist Wicca of sorts as young as 8, with information from libraries and the earliest form of the internet, which would be the library computer, and not the public library, because it did not have computers when I was in 7th grade, the public library. Or it did, but that was like where they were putting the card catalog mostly. It didn't have full internet access at my in Lenawee County, their library, because I lived just outside the city limits and could not get a library card for either Tecumseh or Adrian, so I had to go to the Lenawee County Public Library, which was like a mess and a half to get to, even on my bicycle. And even then, it was like within the Adrian city limits. But I've noticed, like, when I discuss things with a lot of pagans all over the world, there's a lot of similarities. Like, we're at a point in the neo-pagan revival of pre-Christian religions where there are not only because like, honestly, like, the earliest form of neo-pagan religions as are practiced today are ones that kind of came up sort of organically from people reading some not necessarily the most correct information, because like I said about the 19th century, neo-pagan back to nature sort of revival that they were having with like the romantics and stuff. But so like a lot of people were just kind of like, they understood, like they were like reading some translations of Plato and various mythologies, like, the Orphics and all of that. And like, they weren't necessarily the best translations as far as like a most direct translation, but oh shit, what's his name? He did it's in the public domain now, so it's on theoi.com, theoi.com. Translation of the Orphic hymns. It was done, I want to say, 18th century. And I have a lot of friends who are still very much deep in the Hellenic Reconstruction that I used to be a part of. And I still have great respect for the Reconstructionist paths. And I still do subscribe to a very Reconstructionist-minded theology, as in, like, I believe that the gods are multiple and they just exist. And it makes perfect sense to me to there's one of the pagan YouTubers I kind of like, but I don't always agree with her on things, and I need to do an edited video showcasing the some of the YouTubers that I like, even though I don't always agree with them. And what's her channel called? I think it's called Lunar Wisdom. She does a lot of live podcasty type stuff with her and somebody else logged in remotely. And she does a lot of, she does a Lunar Wisdom I think it is Lunar Wisdom. She does a podcast, and she also does these little sort of ranty kind of videos as well too, where she was there's this one where I don't agree with her on that, but I kind of see why she believes it. So she was using an example of the goddess Hecate, and that she thinks it's very wrong-headed and closed-minded of certain polytheists to believe that the goddess she knows as Hecate is fundamentally different from, say, Hellenic Reconstructionists' Hecate. And she does have a very, in listening to her podcasts and watching her other videos, she is coming from a very sort of neo-Wiccan kind of perspective, where it's very much in the Cunningham books, and some stuff I can see maybe residual from like Raven Silver Wolf or whatever. she does do a lot more in-depth research than a lot of us did in the 90s when we were dabbling in paganism and witchcraft. And, this is what the thing that I like. I kind of like laugh when people talk about, like appropriative stuff about witchcraft now. And I'm like, oh, honey, this has been cycling through since at least the 70s. Um, and, well, yeah, all religions, like if we're talking about religious practices, yeah, they're all invented, somebody has to, but like, where did the inspiration for this invention come from? Did it come from a divine inspiration where we accept at face value that, a deity that, gave it to the person who first, quote unquote invented it? Or do we accept that it came from completely human invention as a way to honor this god or another? I mean, yeah, technically everything is a human, technically anything of human society is a human invention. Like, language is a human invention. Like, that doesn't make it any less real, right? Like, I mean, I could just be talking complete nonsense to somebody who doesn't, speak English right now, but you understand it, I understand it. It's a very real means of communication. So, I mean, just because something is a social construct or human construct doesn't make it any less real. Like, I mean, this apartment building I'm living in is a human construct. It didn't exist until somebody made it, and but that doesn't make it less real. And so as far as like theism goes, I'm very much still a traditional polytheist. I have a theology that is very much in line with the Reconstruction community that I came from. What was I saying? My thought. Please find me again. Thought. Oh yeah. So like I believe that the gods exist. They just exist. Where they came from is they came from they came from the cosmos, which is from the Greek, and of course I'm going back to a largely Hesiodic cosmogony with this, and like cosmos is the opposite force to chaos, and chaos is not what we know as like shit going all higgledy piggledy. It's like chaos is void, and so the cosmos is it's often translated as order, but when you get really into a lot of cosmologies that were clearly influenced by Hesiod, whether that's acknowledged necessarily or not. I mean, there's some things that I've noticed that a lot of people in anthropology don't necessarily pick up on right away, but somebody who is practicing this will. There was a story I read, like a news story I read some time ago, about how a hairdresser uncovered the secrets of Roman noble women's hairstyles, because she noticed there's this one word in Latin that often translates to pin, but it's also used in some dialects to mean needle. And so she figured out, first with wigs, of course, then with, like real, people that, offered to, be her little, guinea pigs for this, that some of these like elaborate Roman noble women's hairstyles where you've got the braids like making this big sun halo that's all solid braids. How do they get that to stay that way? And it's with a combination of like wires and sewing it in place. And she figured this out just like looking at the Latin originally, and then comparing it to translations. And some of the translations will say that, the women, like used the pins in the translation of the Latin. And so when I see people translate cosmos from the Hesiodic cosmologies to mean order, it's not necessarily order. It's only order in that it's opposite of how we colloquially think of as chaos now. Like, so chaos is the is the opposite of cosmos is indeed the opposite of chaos in Hesiodic cosmology and theology, but chaos is most accurately translated from Hesiod to mean void. It is with gods. I mean, I think I can see how some people would call it pantheistic in a way, but cosmos is the opposite of void. So cosmos, so when you've got a void, that is without. So chaos, like, it's, I can definitely see how Hesiod influenced Genesis in that line of, first there was nothing, and then, God said, let there be light, and there was light. So that would be, cosmos. Cosmos is the force, is the divine force that is, where chaos is the force that is without. And so when I say that the gods come from the cosmos, they come from everything. But, but like I said, as a traditional polytheist, I believe that even though the gods came from everything, I'm not pantheist or panentheist, where I believe that the gods are everything. So I, when I do commune with the deities, I see I envision, within my mind's eye, or within my, maybe it's just a result of my synesthesia in some way when I feel them through certain ways, but the gods they came from everything, but they exist individually as their own entities within the everything, within the width of cosmos, whereas the chaos is without. So, where cosmos came from before, after chaos, it's not necessarily important. It's not necessarily important. Or, we could say that, cosmos as, or chaos as void, without. This is just kind of a metaphor that, nothing can exist before everything exists, because then where would everything come from? So, so, if like first out, first there was void, right? First we were without, and that, it makes no sense, because, it always, it was always with. It was always with. It was just in a different form, the with. So, and I probably sound really amazing if you are high right now. That just occurred to me that you all signed up for a goth related chat, and I'm going into my odd little beliefs that probably sound like 2 steps removed from spirit science nonsense. And I'm like, I do watch spirit science sometimes, but sometimes I just watch spirit science to just be like, what the fuck are you smoking, honey? Oh, that's why you did a cannabis video. You're high. But because sometimes it's just like spirit science is just like one of the woo-woo out there kind of channels, and it is not amongst my favorites that I disagree with, just because I disagree with them so regularly, but it's definitely entertaining in some sense. Okay, there's where I left off a bit ago. There's something, oh yeah. Oh, I have a soft spot for Konstantinos. He's entertaining on so many levels, just like, and I'm just like, you shine on, you crazy diamond, you. As long as it works and makes you transcend into something better. Oh yeah, absolutely. That's ultimately where I think a lot of people, like, this is where I'm kind of at odds with some people about, in the polytheist community, is while I understand what they're saying, like, don't listen to me, I'm in chaos magic, I reinvent my spirit. Oh yeah, that's one of the things that, like, I love Storm Constantine, what she and Taylor Elberd are doing with the Grimoire Dahara. I just don't necessarily believe with their theology, which is rooted in chaos magic, where, or at least I see it described as chaos magic a lot, where we can say, oh, these gods are an evolved kind of thought form that is created by either an individual, a human, or the human experience. And I'm like, that's an interesting way to see your theology. That is really an interesting way to see your theology. But what existed before our thoughts? Where did we get these thoughts from? And as a writer, I love mythos, but to me, the gods and goddesses come from the power that we humans give or have given them. Yeah, again, that's that's in line with what I see a lot more people. If it's not straight up chaos magic, it's definitely influenced by chaos magic, which is all well and good. Oh, I would kiss the kitty right now, but as you requested of me almost 10 minutes ago, but he is very comfy on my lap. We are the physical forms within goddess energy within, just me personally. And that's certainly, it's certainly a belief you can have. And if that's true for you, you are welcome to that. Which new video ContraPoints? But we created mythos as humans. The writer. Yeah, Konstantinos the writer. Wait. Or were you talking about Storm Constantine the writer? Yeah, if you were talking about Storm Constantine, yes, the writer. If you were talking about Konstantinos, who somebody else mentioned before, yes, the writer. Hi, someone wants me to give you kisses for him. And oh, honey, no, get back on the lap. Get on the lap. Lap. Be cozy. Be cozy. People love you. You're why people tune into my show. Looks like you have to be going, but that's about all I can strain to read right now. And, well, you take care of yourself. And next time I do a stream, I want to do a couple more edited videos before I do another stream. But, have to be going, Reverend Seymour. Oh, thanks so much. I'm glad you tuned in. I think I remember you from the first round, too, where I got booted, basically. One of his books fell on me. Constantino did Nocturnal Magic. I think he did something else called the Gothic Grimoire, which, of course, I ate up when I was like 14 because I'm 14 and I'm vaguely interested in paganism and witchcraft and stuff, but I was still just kind of making it up as I went along. And that's a perfectly valid way to do that. That's certainly a perfectly valid way to practice your religion. So I'm very much a vampires with a Y, yes. I'm still very much a polytheist, and as far as my theology goes, basically, I don't necessarily agree with the what's it called? The more like chaos magic sort of thing. At least I've come to associate that with the chaos magic theology, where deities and whatnots are manifestations of human creation in some form or another. I don't necessarily agree with that and I think it's because of the way I write. So, this is where you're going to start comparing me to Anne Rice. And I know I did the live stream with the popcorn tag back on Wednesday, which is when I do my reading streams. The last Wednesday I do my reading streams. Wednesday in general, sometimes I'm sewing, sometimes I'm doing a jigsaw puzzle. Oh yeah, I do like Anne Rice, but I've got a couple friends who just kind of smile and nod when she talks about how when she's writing, it's like, she talks about like her writing process, her creative process. She compares it to being compelled to write about these characters through a spirit, like the spirit of the characters, like Lestat practically literally commands her and his ethereal form to write about his stories. And I have a very similar relationship with the characters I've written about and hope to continue writing about, but they've kind of been a little silent with me for a while. Yeah, I've got 2 novels on Amazon. Like you can, like, I mean, yeah, they're self-published, so it's print on demand through Amazon. But yeah, I have written two novels. One took me in the area of about 8 years to finish. One I finished over about 18 months. So, uh, and I'm going to be continuing, and I have continued writing, though unpublished, about the characters from the second novel, which took me only about 18 months. Is just like, I don't know. I just kind of been they've kind of fell silent for me most of this last few years. So, um, but yeah, I kind of have a very similar relationship to how Anne Rice describes her creative process with the writing about like Lestat and Armand and everybody. That, you know, these characters are commanding her to write, and that's how I feel about it. Like there's only like I it's almost like I have a conversation with them mentally, but you know, like in a different way than and it definitely feels to some extent external in that or maybe this could just be my ADHD. You know, I'm open to it being, you know, a manifestation of my attention deficit hyperactive disorder inattentive form. You know, I'm open to it being a manifestation of that. But, you know, it does feel external because it just seems so random. But then again, I have other very random thoughts that feel different in a way. And he's found a spot between like I've got two shopping bags from Crazy Wisdom, and he's found this spot between the shopping bags and my leg where he just wants to sit and lay right now. He's being very aloof with the camera all of a sudden, and I don't get that because he's usually such a ham. And he's so cute. I'm going to see if I can turn this around so we can see Murnau being adorable. Do we see him? Yes, we do. Look at him. Look at this fucking kitty. Look at this fucking kitty. I'm gonna catch up a little bit here. I can link to my novel. It's really hard for me to do right now because I'm on my phone. But I will definitely. Do I have a link to my novels in a bunch of my description boxes? I don't know. I'll do it in the comments. When this goes to archive, definitely. But you can search my name, Ruadhan, J middle initial, and then McElroy, McElroy. And Stephen King feels like he saw what he wrote and then wrote it down, which is why his writing is probably adapted to movies so often. Oh yeah. Yeah, Stephen King films are very hit or miss. Like he gets he gets some of the worst luck with adaptations. Yeah, egregores. Oh yeah, yeah, and that evolved from Platonic as in Plato theories of thoughts having their own spirits to them. And I don't think Plato came down one direction or the other, whether like humans created the thought forms or the thought forms invaded human headspace. But let's see. So if you create them as a character for a novel, it will talk to you. I mean, yeah, but you know, did I create that, or did the spirit just kind of invade my thought space? Yeah, Moon and Mercury. That's kind of, you know, I'm a bit more on that side just because of the way that it feels. Like I said, I know I've got my oh yeah, Murnau is so fucking cute. He knows how cute he is. Baphomet, as in the the sigil of Baphomet with the Satan and Satanic Temple, or the Satanic Temple's big Baphomet statue, or the entity on its own, separate from those. Not the Satanic version. Is that a plush toy? No, that's my cat Murnau, named after the director Friedrich Wilhelm Murnau. The real Baphomet, as in the entity. I don't have a whole lot of knowledge about the origins of Baphomet as a their mythology. I know the standard wisdom is that Baphomet has been influenced by a lot of mythological figures, and um, and that is certainly possible. As far as Baphomet as an entity, and like I said, like okay, like let's say that these influences on Baphomet, like I'm just pulling things out of my ass right now because my tablet is being too slow to do a web search, and I'm broadcasting from my phone, and my desktop computer needs a new power supply, which is right behind the phone right now, but I really hate unplugging everything just to. I hate taking apart the computer chassis. I really do. That is one of my most hated chores ever when I have to do it. Um, but um, so and my laptop does not have a working S key, and I really don't feel like fucking around to try and get the S key to work for a change. So I can enter in the password, which needs the S key to unlock the laptop. But then what happens? So so yeah, let's say that Baphomet exists independently and existed before everything that um we know that we know in our human way to have been an influence um, on the existence of Baphomet, or spiritual creation on the ethereal plane of the cosmos that is. So let's say Baphomet existed long before um, chaos magic theology comes into it, and so how would Baphomet then signal their existence? I forget if Baphomet is typically regarded with masculine or feminine pronouns, so I'm just defaulting to they, just because like it's the safest. So, because then again, I know Baphomet is often portrayed with both breasts and a wiener, so they works. Both. uh, so yeah, let's say Baphomet existed before what is commonly regarded as influences on the creation of Baphomet's entity existed even, or let's just say um, Baphomet was. So how would Baphomet, in this idea that Baphomet has always existed in some form or another, like how would they signal their existence? This is an entity very much unlike other entities that are already known to exist as a deity or a nymph or some other spirit. So let's um, let's say that first they signal to the people who let's say they first signal hints of Lilith and hints of, I don't know, Eshkurgal. I'm pulling things out of my ass right now because I know very little about Baphomet mythology. And this is going to be very obvious. So let's say like Baphomet is throwing out hints of Lilith and Eshkurgal and this and that. And, eventually these magicians and, all that who we know in human history to have quote unquote created Baphomet's entity on the spiritual plane, maybe Baphomet was just throwing out the right signals so that these people who first knew of Baphomet could say, oh yeah, it's very much like this and this, and this is where Baphomet comes from. Or it's quite possible that because the Lilith and Eshkurgal and Cernunnos, the Welsh with the antlers and all that, just was like throwing out these signals. and created, amongst each other on the ethereal plane, and just kind of created Baphomet, on the ethereal plane, and then like all these same signals were being picked up on the human plane as, so it doesn't necessarily have to be, a human creation, but if that is the thought that, if that is the explanation that makes sense, that makes the most sense to somebody else, I'm like, okay, that's just what makes sense to you. But to me, it makes just as much sense that, Baphomet is around my neck right now, and always, unless I shower. Oh, jewelry then. That's, oh god, oh, some of my jewelry. I keep meaning to do. I've got a notebook full of ideas for videos. Like I said earlier in tonight's live stream, especially this portion of it, because the first 45 minutes or so, I got lagging and I couldn't make it work without shutting down YouTube and relaunching. But yeah, there's some rings that I wear all the time, and actually two of the ones that I've worn most of my life at this point. So we've got the Irish Clouda ring, and that is let's see. There are some regions where the tradition is, this was actually like, so it's commonly regarded as a traditional Irish wedding ring, and it's traditional in that it goes back to the 17th, maybe 16th century, this kind of design on a ring with the heart and the hands and the crown. So it's not like, like centuries old. It's not like, pre-Christian or anything. It's just, it's been around a few centuries, like 17th, maybe 16th century, I think, were some of the earliest ones that we found with this design. And in some families, it's passed down from grandmother to granddaughter. And there are newer styles now that are designed with men in mind, to be a little bit more masculine. I got mine from my stepmother. Oh god, my stepmother, I loved my stepmother. There's a video from a few weeks ago after I learned that she had died. Actually, there's a few videos from about the time I learned she had died. Like, first I made one, a get ready with me as I was getting ready to go out to the bar, and then I never actually went out because I missed the bus. And talking about how hateful my stepbrothers were for saying that for deciding amongst themselves that I did not need to know that my stepmother, their mother, died. And they told my my half sister Ruby about, not to tell me. Like, they even insisted that Ruby did not need to know that. Like, they insisted to Ruby, my half sister on my dad's side. They insisted to her that our stepmother, Ruby's and my stepmother, their mother, didn't even have my P.O. box to send mail to, which is a straight up lie, because she sent me a certified letter, which came far later than it should have, but that's what happens when you send a certified letter or registered mail to a P.O. box. Like, and I've heard stories about people not getting their certified letters on time like they're supposed to at a home address as well. But, she literally sent me certified mail after my younger sister died a couple years ago. And so yeah, my stepmother gave me the Clouda ring. I loved her. I cared very much for her. But she wasn't quite all there, in some senses. I did like her as much. I liked her probably more than a lot of stepkids, at least when their parents marry older, when the kid is older. So let's see. She and my dad married when I was about 12. Yeah, I just turned 12. And I liked her as much as like any, stepkid could like their, step parent. I mean, yeah, it was tense, of course, but I noticed that, so my stepmother, who does not have any Native American ancestry, but her first husband did, when we moved into her house, uh she and we moved into her house. Just like, my dad had his reasons. They were stupid, but he had his reasons. um there was also the fact that, she went to school in that area, but I mean, I don't know, a lot of people commute to school, I guess, but whatever. Like, he had his reasons, whatever. Some of them were stupid, some of them were far more convoluted than they needed to be. But so when we first moved into her house, she had all of these like kitschy new age, you know, tchotchke kind of like paintings on a collectible ceramic plate of, Native American art made in that, like, kind of like Amy Brown Fairy kind of style of Native Indians on the art. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I asked her when we first moved in, um, if she was Native, and she said no, but my sons are part. And I'm like, okay, she's really into whatever part of her husband's ancestry that, he is most proud of. So, her first husband was, his mother was Choctaw. So, and I forget where her first husband's father had a lot of ancestry, but his last name was Garland. So, um, but yeah, like her first mother-in-law was Choctaw. So she ended up collecting a lot of native stuff because her first husband was native. Therefore, her boys were like a quarter Choctaw. And okay, and then after marrying my dad, who was really proud of the Irish side of his family, which is his dad and, according to him, most of his mother. Um, though that later changed as I got older into saying that both of his parents were pure Irish, and I'm like, Dad, your mother's side has been in the States for so long. It's like, okay, Dad, you do you. Shine on, you crazy diamond. Ray McElroy. I said, God, Ray McElroy. What? Oh God, I don't know why I said Mac. Uh, but um, but um, but um. Then what happened? Yeah, so after she married my dad, she very quickly started replacing all of the, kitschy Native American tchotchkes with Irish stuff that's clearly made for the tourist and Irish American pseudo homeland nationalist market. Like that. Oh God, what did the guy who was on the Father Ted commentary track say, like, about the opening theme music for Father Ted, that Dweedledee kind of music? Oh my God, yeah, that kind of stuff, that plastic patty nonsense. I'm like, oh, thanks, Alice, because even when I was younger, I was really into a lot of, like, like actual Irish history and stuff. So that's one of the big reasons that I've been making various attempts throughout my life. Not necessarily the most dedicated attempts before this last couple months, but I have made attempts to learn the Irish language and learn actual Irish history. And there's my stepmother putting leprechauns all over the house, and I'm like, there's only so much you can do about it when you're 12, 13, 16 years old. And I left home at 17. So at that point, it wasn't my problem anymore. And it's like, Dad, yeah, you can look at all the leprechauns and the little, shamrock prayer needle points that she bought from a tourist catalog, like, but oh yeah, I've got a couple books of Irish mythology and folklore. But yeah, I'm like, oh, Alice, shine on, you crazy diamond woman. But yeah, so she got me a Claddagh ring when I was about 13, and this one, I can kind of see it on my end, but then again, I also know where to look for. And I hadn't worn it for years because the back of the ring had broke. And it's sterling silver, so it's a relatively easy and cheap repair. It was just like, when am I going to do it? And so it was in my box for a long time. But before my stepmother died, I got it repaired and put it back on and started wearing it again. Like, for years, I was like really bitter toward my dad and my stepmother, and about various things. But after I got over it, I had the ring repaired and put it back on, and now I wear it all the time again. And this is actually a replacement of one that years and years and years ago, back when I was in high school, she visited her mother in Missouri, and this was before her mother moved to Adrian, and I went to high school in Tecumseh, Michigan. If you're not familiar with Adrian, Michigan, neither am I, and I went to high school in that area. It's a little it was actually like kind of a booming little town, early 20th century, and then the 1940s. And what happened in the 1940s was a huge boom in car culture, especially in Michigan. And Adrian is just a far off enough a convenient place to put a freeway that what was starting to become a booming city in the early 20th century became this kind of picked over small town that has a small, tiny little Catholic university run by Dominican nuns, and also and so like all of the big rural area, all the big rural pockets around Adrian stayed very, very rural, and um so yeah, like that's about where I went to high school, and I grew up in Metro Detroit, though I technically lived in Toledo, Ohio, but then again, because of the freeways, that's like maybe a half-hour drive. Like, it is quicker to drive to Toledo, Ohio from Detroit itself than it is to drive to some cities that are considered properly Metro Detroit. like, like Troy is often considered Metro Detroit, but it's a good, 30 minutes between like the city limits of Detroit and Troy. I'm sure there are some people who speed and make it there faster, but like I said, like, depending on the freeways you take, it's just as fast, if not faster, to drive to Toledo, Ohio from Metro Detroit than it is to drive to Troy from Metro Detroit. So, shit, it's a faster drive to Toledo from Detroit than it is to Ann Arbor from Detroit. And Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti, where I'm living, which is just outside Ann Arbor. It's like Ann Arbor's, little redheaded stepchild that, gets, if Ypsilanti, and Ann Arbor were a fairy tale, Ypsilanti would be Cinderella before the fairy godmother, and Ann Arbor would be the overpriced ugly stepsister. And I'm talking like Ever After's Cinderella story, because I love that version. It is amazing. There's nothing I would do differently about that version of the Cinderella story. And it's one of those perfect fairy tale movies. And yeah, they take a lot of the supernatural elements out of it, but they do it in a way where you don't miss it. And I loved that little jab that they made with Leonardo da Vinci as the fairy godmother, because people have been hypothesizing that da Vinci was gay for so long. So to see this little fictionalized Leonardo da Vinci as a fairy godmother stand-in, I just laughed so hard when I first noticed that. I swear I see a plush toy or pony. Are you talking about this behind me? Oh, maybe my rarity from my it's on top of my backpack. She's clipped to my backpack. Oh, hello, Luna Moon! I didn't see you come on! Tweedledee, Twathdananum, stories are fun. Almost started learning Gaelic, but it's so hard. Norwegian is... Really? Huh. I'm finding Gaelic a lot easier to pick up on, at least pronunciations, once I get used to how Gaelic uses the alphabet. Lived in Ireland for